session to discuss the items listed under C, and also the one item that was added on with respect to the City of Fontana versus the State Board of Equalization. So we'll be going back on those 4 items after the open session.
Thank you. I'd like to make one change in our presentations. We have a legislative update from Senator Mike Morrell. I'd like to ask him to come forward this time and make that presentation.
Thank you. My one fan there. Thank you, Jim. Hey, it's good to be here. I just got out of session, not a mental session, but out of Sacramento, okay, which could be both. That is a mental, you're right. And so it was good to get out of Sacramento and be here with people who are normal. So thank you very much for having me. I only have 5 minutes, so there's a lot going on in the state, but I'll just try to keep my remarks for a quick overview. My friends across the aisle refer to themselves as progressives, and that means they believe in the expansion of the bureaucratic state. And so what's happening is government is continuing to expand, and what that essentially is doing right now is taking our rights away as people. We're supposed to be a government of, by, and for the people, governed by consent. And it's very dangerous because Sacramento's growing. We're growing in debt in the wrong way. Taxes, and more taxes. And as you know, SB 1 was an interesting thing for the gas tax. We need infrastructure to move our goods and services. But in 2002, the voters voted to have our gas tax used for roads, and that was siphoned away. They voted again in 2006. That money was hijacked in 2010 again. And to make a long story short, we were promised that gas tax this time was going to go for roads, but only a small portion of it's going to go for roads. Some of it's going to go for bike trails and hiking trails through Caltrans, and so it's not a good use of taxpayers' money. Second thing that I'm concerned about, and I'm sure our chief of police would be concerned, this year and last year was sort of the year of the criminal. A few years ago, AB 109, as you know, was released. These criminals can break into our homes, and if they steal under $900, they're just released. One man, I was going to call him a gentleman, but he wouldn't be a gentleman, has broken in 41 times in Redlands that he's been caught, through May, and yet they just catch and release. And then there was bail reform, which made it easier, and a host of other things, too. So I'm very concerned about that, and that comes back to 2 things. I think the solution is since we are governed by consent, we're the first nation that no longer have to bow a knee to a king, but we have the ability to elect our own leaders. So we have to exercise our civic responsibility vigorously and upgrade those people we send to represent us. I would just ask that you guys don't upgrade me, But it's a very serious thing up in Sacramento. I'm concerned. I'm grateful. San Bernardino, I really feel, is coming back. You're out of bankruptcy. That's a wonderful thing. But I'm getting other cities that I'm here that are in a lot of trouble, including our state. And so there's just a lot of financial challenges, and we haven't been wise and efficient with the people's money. And so, again, it requires the citizens to hold elected leaders accountable. So what I'd like to suggest to you is we need to make sure the elected officials, including me, that we rank the citizen above the state, and we make sure and remind our politicians that they're public servants and not masters, and they work for us. And that takes a lot of work to do. And then my last closing thought that I'd like to share with you guys is our country's in a little bit of challenges. North Korea, $84 trillion in unfunded liabilities, and a host of other problems that I could name, but I'm sure you guys are aware of those things. But I'm reminded of a couple of things that made America great. Was Alexis de Tocqueville on Democracy in America, in his 700-page book, as he traveled every corner of America trying to find out our success. He finally found it, he said, in the church, because people, the pulpit was aflame with righteousness. And what he's saying is, if that's for me, just tell them I'm giving a speech right now. So, anyway, the point is, let me go on to my next point. Benjamin Franklin, the least religious, reminded us that if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground unnoticed by God, neither can a nation rise up without his assistance. And so one thing I just want to encourage us is to pray for our nation, and that's why I'm grateful you guys start off in prayer. That's a wise thing to do, especially right now, because we want to draw upon wisdom higher than ourselves. But I want to close with one last thought. I get a lot of people, I don't know, in the last few weeks since I've been back, is there's hope for California. And I think they're talking about statewide, and there is, and I don't have any false hopes or anything. There's a lot of things I wish I could share that if I had time I would, perhaps another time. But Winston Churchill's an inspiration to me. I want to close with a quote, because in 1941, it was pretty much a done deal that the Nazis were going to defeat Great Britain, right? And even FDR did not want to sell destroyers to Great Britain because he was afraid Great Britain was going to lose. But he did. But here's what Churchill says, and this will sort of be our calling and my calling, and hope you guys enjoy what Sir Winston has to say. So it says, "Our future and that of many generations is at stake. We are sure that the character of human society will be shaped by the resolves we take and the deeds we do. We need not bewail the fact that we have been called upon to face such solemn responsibilities. We may be proud and even rejoice amidst our tribulations that we have been born at this cardinal time for so great an age and so splendid an opportunity of service here below." Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts with us today. Next, we'd like to invite our Fire Chief Dan Muncy to come forward to the podium to provide a presentation on the EMS paramedic bridge.
Yes, real quick, Senator Morrell, that was Governor Brown calling, and he wants to thank you for your service and tell you to have some nice time off from Sacramento. I want to hire a local workforce, and doing so as a firefighter is very, very difficult. Simply put, the requirements to become a firefighter has been absolutely prohibitive. Generally, what we find is citizenry from the richer part of our states living at home. Their parents send them to school, and then they come and look for employment as a firefighter. San Bernardino County is the second lowest county paid fire department out of our 5 neighboring counties. So as soon as they have an opportunity, they would leave San Bernardino County. When I grew up in the fire service, I started a very small town, and as a paid call firefighter, and worked my way through the ranks. And I had a lot of guys helping me as I moved forward. And you know what that breeds? That breeds loyalty. I'm going to introduce you guys to a program that allows us to hire our citizens in this area. It gives them an opportunity, an equal opportunity to become a firefighter, and it's breeding that same type of loyalty. So first, firefighter is a job. We don't ever see anybody leave after a year or two. Generally, someone becomes a firefighter, they're here for 30 years. The schedule is very non-traditional. We ask our firefighters to work every day of the week. They work 24 hours, up to sometimes 5 or 6 days straight. They work holidays and Christmases, and often when they think they're getting a day off, we'll call them on the phone and tell them that we have a vacancy and they have to work. But the opportunities of being a firefighter are absolutely endless. So the traditional firefighter entry, this is our Orange County kid model, as I'll call it, required a 1-semester class, EMT. You get your high school diploma, you can go take EMT, you take it a couple of nights a week, you become your basic entry-level emergency medical technician. After that, we would generally see individuals go to the fire academy. Now, the fire academy is much more intensive. It's 3 to 6 months long, depending on where you're going. It's every day of the week, generally Monday through Saturday. During this time, it is impossible to spend any time with your family, and it's impossible to have a career. So read between the lines. If you're going through the fire academy, most often you're not able to get a paycheck. Next, we require our firefighters to become an EMT and work for a private ambulance. A private ambulance company, well, let me put it this way, In-N-Out pays better wages. After that, they're required to go to paramedic school. Paramedic school is probably the toughest thing I've ever done in my life, and I got a 4.0 in my master's degree for perspective. Paramedic school is a year You're going to school Monday through Saturday. You have no time to sleep. You have no time to eat. Matter of fact, the first day of school, the instructor made us stand up, and he made 50% of us sit down, and he said that'll represent how many people get divorces or broken up with their significant others. It is intense. So this traditional process, you could see, if you grew up in our community, generally you have to work. You have a family that relies on you. So how do we solve that? The traditional entry can be very long, expensive process, and not only that, you're not even guaranteed to become a firefighter after you've taken all those steps. It's a very, very, very competitive job. When I stood in line to become a firefighter, there was 3,000 people for 3 people, for 3 positions. So the individuals traditionally must overcome paying for these college expenses, providing for their families, and then not having that guarantee. This traditional program has severe expenses, a tough schedule. It's very hard to raise a family. Does this sound a lot like being a police officer too? A little bit. The factor simply left our residents behind. So the timeline to complete this is 2.5 to 3 years. When we are at a job fair and somebody comes up to us and they say, how do I become a firefighter? I start explaining the process and they go, how long is that going to take? 3 years. They turn around and go to Burtech. Anybody. Because 3 years is a long time. The classes are typically $7,000 to $10,000 to cover the class materials, the books, the uniforms, and then there's the intangible costs, the ones that you can't put value. The loss of potential earnings and wages and the loss of family time. So in 2015, we had an opportunity to work with Victor Valley College. And we went to Victor Valley College and we simply said, we're going to have to teach our own paramedic school. It's going to be very expensive for us. And if we look at our mission, it really is to hire the San Bernardino County workforce, not the Orange County workforce, San Bernardino County workforce. And it's your mission as a community college to train the San Bernardino County workforce. And through the scope of that, I found out that our local community colleges often have people from out of the county coming and taking the classes. The ones that have the high-earning jobs, the ones that provide for a career. So I asked Victor Valley, I said, what can we do to change this? So we designed a non-traditional hybrid paramedic program, and I'm going to introduce a recent graduate to that program. David, would you come up for me? David Columbell is our most recent firefighter paramedic. Matter of fact, I think he stood for his exams yesterday for this position. He works at our fire station 226, Highland and Del Rosa. That's one of our busiest medic units. David is also certified in aircraft rescue and firefighting. And I believe he's going to be our future. So I want to introduce David to you. Good job. So let me talk about this pathway that allows us to hire our citizenry. We do ask individuals to complete EMT. That's easy. 1 semester and you can take night classes. That's your commitment. And then to apply to our fire department. We've created several new entry-level jobs. They don't pay much more than in and out, but they give you holiday, vacation, and they give you retirement. More importantly, they give you a foot in the door. They work 24-hour shifts. They're working in our fire stations. And the AO EMT is an ambulance operator EMT. County Fire is the second largest ambulance provider in the county. This allows the individuals to work as EMTs and work alongside a paramedic in the station to be mentored by our guys. Then they complete that hybrid schedule paramedic program. Now, there's 2 things on this hybrid schedule. Our commitment is we're going to sponsor you. We're going to pay for your books. We're going to buy you an iPad. We're going to pay for your uniforms while you're there. And the college's commitment is instead of teaching this Monday through Saturday, let's do it based on the firefighter work schedule. David works 24-hour shifts. What shift you on?
C shift.
C shift. The school said, look, we'll teach all our classes. If you move everybody over to A and C shift, we have 3 different shifts, A, B, and C, we'll teach all our classes on the B shift when they're off. This is non-traditional. They teach classes on Sunday, sometimes going till 10 o'clock at night. But it's also hybrid. 49% is online, and 51% is in seat. So what this allows is somebody to work as an ambulance operator or as a member of our hand crew, or to work for a private ambulance company and work, and then on their days off, it allows them to go to school. When they're completed with the school, if they're an ambulance operator, they're allowed to immediately test and promote to ambulance operator paramedic, which pays a little bit more. More importantly, that is the doorway to becoming a full-time firefighter paramedic with our county fire. This shortened the timeline from a 3-year period down to about 18 months to get this job. It's made it very affordable with the department sponsoring the education and allows the individual to maintain that full-time employment and still have family time. Did you have much family time? Yeah. A little bit. And attainable. It allows the individuals to support that family as they move through the process. And David has 2 little kids. So has this been successful? Very much so. In 2015, we had 13 of our ambulance operators transition to full-time firefighter, 1 of our paid call firefighters, which is a volunteer position, and 1 of our hand crew members, for a total of 16 individuals out of 48. That's a 33% of the individuals that went through this program. In 2016, our numbers got even better with a total of 19 out of 46%. How do you apply? You can go to our County Fire website, and on that website, you'll see a button that says Join Our Team. If any members of the audience have any questions, they can feel free to reach me at area code 760-774-2569. The city clerk does have my phone number if anybody wants to reach me, or they can send me an email. My email is located on our department website. David, thank you. Good job. Two more quick items. First, this Saturday, we are having a County Fire open house. It'll be between 10 and 2 o'clock at our fire station off 3rd Street. It's immediately adjacent to Route 66. We are bringing in our helicopters. We're bringing in our snowcats, which is something you generally don't see in San Bernardino City. Our hand crews will be there. Our bulldozers will be there. We'll have fire engines spraying water for the kids. We'll have station tours. We'll have an auto extrication using the Jaws of Life demo. There's a lot of great things going on. And it will give us an opportunity to reach out to our youth and talk about a lot of the safe fire principles. And Sparky will be there. We've been looking for a volunteer. Can I put you down? It's going to be 95 degrees. We will have our fire explorers there, which is a great opportunity for kids to be involved in the fire department. Finally, this morning, we had, can I get you gentlemen up here, please? Let me introduce to you Keith Moore. Keith is a 27-year veteran from Riverside City Fire Department as fire prevention officer. Monday, he started with County Fire, so he brings a great depth. He's going to be working here in San Bernardino City. And Ruben Luna, Ruben comes from 20 years in the private sector. We're really proud to have him because he's been very intricate in sprinkler and sprinkler design. So these guys are absolute assets. It actually increases the amount of fire prevention officers that we have here in the city to 9. So we're fully staffed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chief Muncy. We're certainly happy to hear about the exciting work that you're doing to help to encourage firefighters to come from the local community. Are there any questions from the council? Thank you very much. Next, we invite Bob Dutton to come forward. Bob's going to give us an update on some economic trends. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. As your county assessor recorder, a lot of people don't really understand what we do. Now, when I was in Sacramento, I used to be able to go get into it with Governor Schwarzenegger and so forth. Of course, he had that sword from Conan the Barbarian that he kind of used as an enforcing tool. But nevertheless, coming down here, I found that people didn't really understand what the assessor does. And we actually go back the office of the assessor, not this one here in San Bernardino County, but historically we go back to 6000 BC, to the days of pharaohs. As a matter of fact, Matthew, the apostle, was actually a tax assessor.
I think Bob was there.
However, as civilization moved forward, we discovered that it was probably not such a good idea that you have the person determining the value of property and who owned it, and also be the same person who collects it, the taxes, and determines what the tax amount is. Because back in those old days, good old days, the tax collector used to actually get paid a percentage for every dollar they collected in taxes. Sometimes the sheriff was actually the tax collector. So there's been a lot of changes in the history of tax of the assessor's office. And here in California in 1849, when we adopted our Constitution, we separated the two functions, and the office of the assessor is required by state law, by the state Constitution, to be an elected position. And that's the reason they wanted to make sure that the people had a voice even though it was somewhat not directly tied to taxation. Bottom line comes down, the assessed value of property has a bearing on the amount of taxes that you will pay in the way of property tax. Now, my job, the way I look at my function, is to make sure that I'm not over-assessing people, that people aren't being over-assessed, therefore being overtaxed. And we have a requirement by state law by July 1st of every year, we have to put out the roll of all the value of property here in San Bernardino County. And the effective date of value is the January prior to that July 1st. So January 1st, 2017 was the date of value. We had to have that roll put out by July 1st of 2017. And what I've started doing is I've started actually coming out to cities to actually give a presentation sometime after the closing of the roll to let you know what we've seen happen over this last year, and also maybe to give you a little historical view of value. Now, the assessor's office value is not necessarily market value. It's value that's been determined for property tax purposes only. So people shouldn't run out and go buy and sell property based on the values we put on the parcels. Here in San Bernardino County, we can go to slide 2. Is there a next slide? Yeah, there we go. Here in San Bernardino County, we have over 810,000 parcels that we have to determine the value of every year. And this year we had over $206 billion worth of value. Now, to put that into comparison to the rest of the state, that puts us at about number 7 as far as total value, property value, within the state of California. Now, what we saw here on a countywide basis was roughly about a 6.1% increase in real estate values over this last year. And here in the city of San Bernardino, we actually saw about a 5.8% increase. And so things are looking a little bit better going in that direction. Go on to slide 3, if you would, please. What I've tried to give you here is a comparison that'll break down the property values between secured and unsecured. Now, secured property value is actual real estate value. Unsecured would be like your business property, who I know Fred's familiar with, right, Fred? Fred has to file an annual business property statement with the assessor's office so that we can determine the value of his business property. If you'll notice here, in between 2016 and 2017 here in the city of San Bernardino, we saw roughly about a 5.9% increase in the secured value, or the real estate value, and we saw about a 4.1% increase in the unsecured. Now, that 4.1% increase was greatly due to between Amazon coming on board and the value of their personal property coming onto the books. And as we see more businesses like that, more development taking place out at the San Bernardino International Airport and some other things, we should see some more increases in the unsecured value, because obviously those are very high users with regards to their equipment values. But when you weigh that out, you'll see roughly about a 5.8% increase. Now, what we did also see is we saw a 1.7% decrease in parcels. Now, when parcels is that if you own a business, that's a parcel. You own a house, that's a parcel. So what that would be an indication of, and I can't tell you if we have a few small businesses that maybe we no longer are in business. However, I will tell you, I did put forth to the Board of Supervisors an increase in the low-value businesses. Right now, the exemption was $4,000. We've increased that to $7,500. So a lot of these small businesses, and there might be a percentage of that, was probably these small businesses no longer being required to have to actually file business property statements. I just didn't feel at that point it frankly wasn't worth the amount of money I was spending to process it, and certainly not worth the amount of money that the people were trying to complete the reports. So it was pretty much based on economic reasons as for it to make sense why we would make a change in that ordinance. Would you go on to slide 4, please? What I prepared for you here is an actual graph for the last 10 years, which will show you the peak that took place there in 2009, and then there was a drop-off. And basically what you'll see on that graph is that it shows a gradual increase starting here about 4 years ago. We're starting to see a gradual increase. We hit bottom, and now we're starting to see a general climb. And I feel, as a former real estate investor myself, spent 45 years in the business, I look at that as being a good thing because I'm seeing a real stable growth in real estate value. Now, I will point this out to you, that if you go back to 08-09, because I was curious as to what happened back then at our previous high to now our new high. And when I took a look at the different types of activities and things that were taking place back in 09, I noticed that about 40% of that increase of value was due to new construction. As compared to last year, only about 10% of the value was due to new construction. So once new construction starts kicking in, providing we do create the jobs necessary to employ people, and we don't see an overbuilt situation develop with regards to housing and things of that nature, frankly, we can probably enjoy a continuation of this type of economic growth. At least that would be my opinion. And by the way, I'm not an economist, so I don't do forecasts. I basically give you my opinion, and I will report to you what has happened. I deal in that reality. I don't deal in forecasting. I'll let other people do that. So I think on that side, it's a pretty positive situation. You want to go to the next slide, please? One of my other functions is as the recorder clerk of San Bernardino County as well. San Bernardino County decided back in 2011 to combine the offices of the assessor, the recorder, and the clerk into one position. And so I also have that responsibility. Last year, we actually recorded over 570,000 documents. We actually filed over 14,000 fictitious business name statements, conducted almost 11,000 marriages, or at least issued 11,000 marriage licenses. We actually married over 4,700 couples. And any idea what you would consider to be the most popular day for somebody to get married? It's coming up. It's Halloween. Yeah, believe it or not, it's Halloween. I was surprised, too. I would have thought Valentine's Day, Christmas, something like this. So come on down to the office of the recorder, and we'll have a lot of people coming in there wanting to get married for Halloween. That's one of our more popular areas. One of the other things I do, because I'm also a member of the California Assessors Association Legend Committee as well as the California Recorders Association, and that was, we look at legislation that's being proposed and how it may impact the operations of the Recorder's Office and the Assessor's Office. Now, there was a bill that I opposed. It passed anyway and got signed, but it was SB 2, and that requires a $75 recording tax. They called it a fee, but it's really a tax. And I distinguish the difference between a fee and a tax. A fee should be the reimbursement of a service, the cost of providing a service. A tax has nothing to do with the cost of the service. That's very simple. This is a tax because what this money is going to go for, it's going to end up being collected here in San Bernardino County. We'll be required to send it up to Sacramento. They're going to form another governing board in Sacramento, which then will determine where best that money should be spent. We estimate roughly about $23 million will be siphoned out of San Bernardino County. Now, I oppose that, and they did do some amendments, and so we do have an opportunity to get some of that money coming back again. I worked on Proposition 1C back in 06, and I was also 1B as well. And the one component on 1C, the housing bond that was put back in those days, I actually did it with San Bernardino, the city of San Bernardino in mind, because we've got affordable housing. We need programs to help rebuild our neighborhoods and rebuild our infrastructure and things of that nature. We need different kinds of urban renewal type programs and so forth. 1C had that. What I'm hoping will happen with this money, at least, It'll at least stay here in San Bernardino County for a short period of time so that we can try to aggressively, between working with the cities and the counties, this would be my hope as to the way it would be set up, we would figure out where we need this money to be best spent in our local communities so that it's not taken up to Sacramento. So you might want to really look at that carefully, see how we can work together, the county and the cities, into making sure that once this money starts being collected, that it actually, we take the opportunity to try to keep as much of it down here in San Bernardino County as possible. And I really think that may be doable. And we'll work with you. I will anyway. I can't say the associations will. We were just against it because in principle it's wrong to use the recorder's services as a way to collect more tax money from the public. And it is unclear as to how much each one of these documents. I'm a little concerned because sometimes you run into a problem, a cloud on a title or something like that. Well, if you have to do a series of changes, it could end up being a $75 fee on each time that you record a document. You have a mechanic's lien or something like that you need to place on a piece of property. You're going to have to file that $75 fee. If you end up having the release of a mechanic's lien, you're going to have to file the fee. So it's a bad law. I voted against it when I was in the state Senate because it's just the wrong way to go about what they're trying to accomplish. But that's largely my opinion. Now, one of the other great things that was my surprise when I became elected your assessor, recorder, and clerk was they also put me in charge of archives. And so if you go on to slide 6, archives, as it turns out, the recorder and the assessor had the most complete archives of all the county departments. And so we became the official archives for the county of San Bernardino. As a matter of fact, if you have things that you want to make sure get preserved, you can contact my office and we'll make sure that they're cared for properly. Our archivist, her name's Genevieve Preston. She actually was with the Huntington Library before she came here to San Bernardino County, so she's well skilled in preserving original documents. But we've been doing what we call Throwback Thursday. And we've been actually putting some things out. My thought was I'd really like to start talking about the history of San Bernardino County and some of the things that we do. And we actually have one of the videos for you. If we can key that up. This was one we did on Route 66. On my website, you'll also find things such other videos. They're also on Facebook as well. What importance the camel had to San Bernardino County. So there was an actual camel corps here in San Bernardino County. We also have some historical information regarding Norton Air Force Base and some of the things. We have actually the original flight logs from Norton Air Force Base. When they shut it down, they weren't sure what to do with it, so they actually gave it to the county archives. And then there's also the question, why is San Bernardino County so darn big? Why is it so large? And I won't tell you. I'll let you go to our website and you can look it up yourself. But we are going to start, doing some different things with regards to San Bernardino County. I find it really interesting to me, and frankly, it seems to be interesting to a lot of people to kind of know a little bit more about our county. As a matter of fact, one of the videos we did actually went viral with 2.7 million hits. So it's been kind of an interesting time. I want to thank you for allowing me to continue my public service. As your county assessor recorder, I also want to thank you for your moment of silence. As some of you know, Dana Gardner was one of the people who died, and she was my deputy recorder, and she was with the county recorder's office for over 25 years, and she'll be a great loss, not only to her family, but to our office and to the county. And I just want to thank you again for those moments of silence for the people who lost their lives and the ones who have been injured. Thank you for allowing me to make my presentation. May God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. We appreciate that information. It looks like there's some very good trends, so thank you. Next, we'll invite Brent Mason to come forward. There's a presentation on Community Facilities District Overview.
Mayor, members of the council, just as Brent's making his way to the podium, the council's aware we have several developers in the community that are very interested in developing in the Verdamont Hills area. There's some exciting opportunities, and as Mr. Dutton pointed out, we are hopeful for the growth in our community. The developers proposed to us, though, opportunities or ways that they could assist in funding some of the impact fees that were required as part of that development opportunity. We've had some great conversations with them, and ultimately, I think we've come to agreement that CFDs is probably an opportune way to assist the development community and do it in a way that benefits the city. So we have some of the development community members here that have been working with us on this. We appreciate the way that they've been cooperative. We started off looking at a SKIP program, which is another way that cities use to fund these types of, and developers use to fund these types of projects. But at the end of the day, I think we have a general agreement that this is something we want to pursue in the future and recommend to the council. I thought it would be prudent, though, because we haven't discussed these in this community for a very long time. Brent's going to just walk through kind of a general, we call it kind of a 101. I think I spoke to Councilmember Nickel about this, and I think we dubbed this the CFD 101 course. But again, not for action this evening, but we do intend to bring something to you very shortly that would be recommended for approval. But we wanted to have this to begin to explore this concept and provide an opportunity to answer any questions that the council may have.
And I don't have more than 60, 75 minutes of comments, probably something like that. So it'll be fairly brief. There probably will be lots more questions involved, and I'm not sure tonight's. And we'll answer whatever questions we have. We'll go, but at the culmination, my crescendo here is that I'm going to recommend that we have a workshop type of thing to go through to to adopt a policies and goals document that is required by CFDs to be able to guide us and the development community in how we structure these transactions. And so then that would reflect your wishes and thoughts on the types of things. In that workshop, we would talk about the kinds of variables that exist. So that's kind of where this is all headed. So you can see the punchline before I get there. So I'm going to run through this briefly. It's probably too brief for the magnitude of the issue, but again, it's designed as to kind of what your appetite for a larger conversation later. CFDs were formed in 1982 with legislation that was designed to provide a funding mechanism to fund municipal improvements for services potentially associated with development. Ultimately, it establishes a special tax on properties that typically starting at the point of construction that are paid on the tax bill with property tax. some concept or some idea of the magnitude in the state. There's, and this is, data's a little old. It's, the reports come out on a very delayed basis from the state with the filings that cities make on the agency or the districts they have. But this is from the 13 fiscal year end. There was 891 agencies in the state of California that had issued or formed CFDs. There was nearly 1,400 separate bond issues, magnitude $16 billion outstanding associated with those districts, and there were 96 specifically in San Bernardino County. There were no facility-related CFDs. There are no facility-related CFDs in San Bernardino City. You recall there was one service-related district with fire up in the north end of town, CFD 1033, that is now transitioned to the county with the fire annexation. I'm not going to go through all this, but as I mentioned, CFDs can be either service-related or infrastructure or facility-related. The benefits of a couple of the benefits of CFDs is that the improvements do not be located in the boundaries of the CFD, provided there's enough nexus and they're a qualifying facility or service. To qualify to be eligible, they do have to have a useful life of longer than 5 years. This list here shows the types of facilities that are eligible per the laws and the services that are eligible as well. Oftentimes it is police and fire services if you go that side of the house, or it's the utility infrastructure kinds of things that are the municipal improvements that are included oftentimes. But there are other things they have been used for as well. The little chart just kind of breaks up some of the differences between a facility CFD and a service CFD. With the facility CFD, you issue debt, bonds. You don't with the service. You just levy the tax, and that pays the operating costs. On the facility side, and you levy the tax, it pays the debt service then. You would have a maturity date associated with the CFD for facilities. You would not for services unless you chose to put one in. You can sunset as well. The improvement types is always for public improvements, and that's probably enough on that then. One of the key documents you approve as part of forming a CFD is called the rate and method of apportionment, and that document, which would then be consistent with the goals and policies that we talked about a minute ago, and we'll talk about more in a minute, further in a minute, defines methodologies that are used to calculate the special tax. It gives guidance to the people that manage this year to year of maximum tax rates, and it can, from the administration standpoint, it serves as a roadmap also. So it's kind of the guiding document, if you will, for each CFD. The formation process is fairly involved. Not a big deal, but it's not something that just happens quickly. A lot of planning and coordination goes into it. It starts usually with the developer submitting an application or a petition. From there, provided that's consistent with the policies and guidelines the council has set for those types of districts. Well, the step here is that you next to adopt the goals and policies, which I'm saying we would be coming forward to do in advance of actually forming a district so that we have some guidance. But those goals and policies talks about things like the priority and eligibility of facilities and fees. So there are different types of facilities. Some that are you may prefer to see financing district allow for certain ones and maybe not for other ones. And so that's all the kind of decisions you would make in that discussion. The minimum credit quality of the developers you're talking about. The disclosure requirements, there's a lot of activity when people buy houses. They want to know, or maybe people are surprised by finding a Melrose tax on their bill. And so we can lay out discussion requirements for the developers as to the disclosure requirement for the homeowners when they come to the sales office or whatever. The maximum tax rate, that's an important thing to talk about because ultimately these taxes increase the effective tax rate on the parcels. And so we want to talk about what is the maximum tax rate we would ever want to impose on somebody. And 2% is a common threshold, but there are places that do less than that. And so that's a decision you have to make then. And then lastly is the value to lien ratio of how much value the district has to have in relation to the bonds you're going to issue. And so that's another controlling factor that affects the sizing of the transactions. Once that's all set, the first of two council meetings occurs, and at the first meeting, it's primarily declaring intention to do a series of things. As you can read here, set the boundaries, approve the boundaries. Again, you're declaring your intention to do these things, to identify the facilities and services, and then to form a CFD, levy tax, issue bonds. Ultimately, you set the public hearing, which will be your second meeting. That second meeting has to occur X number of days. I don't remember the number exactly. It's not less than 45 maybe, and not more than something else. I don't remember the details on that. But anyway, it's a certain period of time out. And then at the public hearing, of course, the public could come to the first meeting too, but the public hearing is specifically designed to incorporate that discussion as you make, that's the deciding point to whether you can actually form the CFD or not. So you then go forward and approve, if you want to, those different things, and ultimately then you would call for the election. The election would occur most typically that same day in the public hearing. It's not a big deal to do that, even though there's a public election right here in front of us, but usually you've got a small handful of property owners that are forming the district, so it takes not a lot of time to count 5 votes or something like that. So you can do that quickly. Or 1 vote sometimes, there's just 1 property owner. And so the type of voting you do, if by chance, if you have less than, I think it's 12 registered voters, you can do that kind of process. If you have, I think it's more than 12, then you have to do a full general election. So that's why you see these things of, not more than 4 or 5 developers coming together and so forth, because they can, decide that vote comfortably. Whereas if an area is already established and you tried to do a CFD, which is still a good option if you had enough support for that, but you then have to have a public election, and 2/3 vote becomes more challenging, obviously. After the election is held, the meeting's not over yet. There will be another set of ordinances adopted that would certify the election results and ultimately put in place the last steps to levy that tax, and then ultimately file the notice of special tax lien at the county, to finalize and certify that has happened and give the world notice that the district has been formed. Again, with the facilities district, thereafter sometime, it doesn't happen usually right away, a bond issue is issued to reimburse the developer for the costs they incurred. Usually the district is formed. Once the developer knows that's in place, he or she would go out, do their business, and then at the time when the value to lien ratio is right, it's set at whatever the rate and method of apportionment says, then they want to get the bond issue done, and the financing team is put together, and we issue bonds, and the developer can get reimbursed from that then. That's it. One thing that's important to understand, too, is that once the houses are built and it goes away, the developer's gone, the city, through this process, has annual administration each year to levy the taxes and do those kinds of things. So there's work to be done. The rate and method will allow for the city to recover its costs, and so if it takes half of one of my staff members or a public works staff member to do this, that cost can be recovered through the districts. And so it's not designed to be a financial burden, but nonetheless, it's still something that has to be done. And beyond just the annual setting of the tax rate and getting that on the levy, collecting and pay the debt service and the bonds, there's other things you have to do. You have to report to the state. The CDAC here is mentioned. There's continuing disclosure requirements you have to file. Both the developer might have to, as well as the city. If you fail to do those, there's some fairly hefty penalties. So it's not to be taken lightly. It's something, it'll get handled. It'll get handled, but it's got to make sure that it's being handled properly. Otherwise, there is risk of fines and so forth. And then ultimately, to monitor the delinquency foreclosures also, so that can put us in a difficult spot if the delinquency rate is above, oftentimes 5% collectively in the district. We have to initiate foreclosure proceedings. That can be challenging, but at the same time, if you're going to put that out there, you can't let the bond be troubled. So again, all things to talk about and think about as we move forward. Then the debt service monitoring, we have to make sure that we adequate funds are in the reserve and so forth, and if not, then we have to take other actions. So anyway, the point is basically that there's a lot of work to do with CFDs after the fact. Not a fiscal challenge because you can recover those, but still things to be done. And as I mentioned before, the wrap-up comment here is simply that, as the city manager mentioned, there are developers approaching the city currently to form CFDs up in the north end of town. The city council should consider whether or not they want to adopt goals and policies. We are proposing that we come back to you in a workshop with a proposed document, and then we make that a working document to to have a discussion about. And then from there, if that is blessed and approved, you would send us on our way to have the further conversation with the developers to bring forward their proposals to the council then.
And just
Thank you.
as the council's asking any questions, I did want to distribute a letter that was received by the city clerk's office, and I believe that I received a copy of it this afternoon, but it is directed to the mayor and council members from Carlos Rodriguez from the Building Industry Association, recommending that the council consider CFDs as an opportunity for the development community. And so I will distribute that. I just want to make sure that as you discuss this, you have that letter with you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Valdivia?
Thank you, sir. Brent, CFD 1033, is that the only CFD that the city at one time had? Or there are multiple?
That is my understanding, yes. And it's a service-oriented, not a facilities-oriented.
Okay, and that's now in the county's purview?
Correct.
What's the difference between an LMD and a CFD? Or do they mimic the same operation?
They function the same from your outside looking in perspective. There are different laws that authorize the creation and formation. There's probably nuances I'm not really conversant in right now to elaborate on or to describe. But the CFDs are generally are a newer type of a mechanism that have more flexibility. I think that's why they're favored. The LMDs are more narrowly focused, and there's some procedural differences as well in the formation and then the annual work.
And a little more restrictive in terms of the uses of those funds.
Yeah.
What, the
With
LMD?
LMDs.
Okay.
The list I showed you with the slide that had all the facilities and things you could do, not all that would be eligible. A lot of that would not be eligible on LMD.
It might be a good time for the council to also entertain LMDs with this discussion of CFDs. I know that there's many LMDs throughout the entire city, I think over 50 LMD districts, and many of them, I think a quarter of them, don't even have a cost escalator.
Right.
I know that in my district, it's either Ward 5 or Ward 3 that has the abundance of these LMDs, and it might be a good discussion, since we're talking about CFDs, to actually discuss what of these LMDs need a cost escalator that is consistent with today's, sprinkler repair, maintenance, and it really makes these HOAs a little, I think, entangled. They're looking at the councilman, Mr. Councilman, help us with this landscaping issue, and essentially our hands are tied.
Right.
And so I point back to the city, and the city is like, well, we have no money. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to maybe entertain a dual discussion on LMDs as well as CFDs.
We will, and I think one of the other things that will help you in that discussion is we're currently pulling together all the data related to the cost and expenses in the LMDs, and so I think that will also add value as you discuss that.
I believe that CFDs are great financial mechanisms for attracting developers to our downtown San Bernardino areas and outlying Little League and Vertimont areas. In the infill locations without heavy perimeter infrastructure requirements, developers prefer to use the tool and mechanism of CFDs to help with fees. So my question to you, Brent, is will the city consider fees to be included in CFDs?
And my answer is going to be that ultimately it's a policy decision, not our decision, but my recommendation to you is that we ought to consider that in the discussion.
Very good.
But there are challenges associated with fees that are far more troublesome from an administration standpoint, but there are some solutions in those things too, I think, that we can discuss at that time. So I would look to you to guide us, but at the same time, there's no reason to be concerned about that. Just you need to go in eyes wide open on it, and there's some risks.
No, and I appreciate the candid response. Also appreciate our BIA organization for providing their perspective on CFDs. I welcome that. Certainly believe that CFDs are a tool for developers, and we want to welcome developers in our community, especially with the housing shortage here in our city. And final question is, can you differentiate, is there a role for SCIPs eventually? Or are we just not prepared for it now? And why CFD over a SCIP?
A couple of responses. Yes, I think at some point for some types of projects in the future, the SCIP may be an appropriate tool. I just don't think at this point, given the request of us and our current capacity, that that's the best tool for us today. But I certainly do think that they are one of many tools, and as we look to future development, we kind of need to identify what tools do we have in our tool basket, and that may very well be an effective one.
And let me comment on that too.
Sure.
That within the CFDs, the objective what the SCIP plans are doing, you can achieve that in a CFD too. It's just that the issue is because there's so many risks of not using those impact fee funds timely, and you have to track where they're used and report back and so forth, and there's just high risk that you don't do that timely. But
Well, that's what I like, because it holds staff and our organization accountable.
But yes, but it may very well be that you want some flexibility, though, and some of the short timeframes don't give you the chance to really do that.
And there are options. For instance,
Right.
my understanding is if you issue taxable bonds instead of tax-exempt bonds, you're relieved from a lot of that requirement, and therefore it costs a little more on the development side, but you're able to then push those fees in, and you remove all that encumbrance associated by issuing tax. The key is you're issuing tax-exempt debt for it, therefore it comes with a lot of red tape. You do taxable for it's a little higher interest rate, probably pencils to a small line item of difference of cost to the developer side, and then we can theoretically open-handedly say, come one, come all.
Well, and I appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Brent, for bringing this to our attention. I welcome the workshop in the preceding weeks and ensuing months on CFDs, also LMDs. And Andrea, if it's possible, why not, if you suggest that SCIP is an opportunity to just put in our tool belt, let's also put that on the table, because if we're strategic planning for the future,
Right.
Let's talk about that so that way council members understand what tool and what mechanism to use and implement, so that we can say, okay, here's the cadre of things to use. Let's use A or C or a combination of them all. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question.
Councilmember Marquez?
Thank you. I, too, look forward to a workshop. At first, when I looked at it, it was a little bit complicated. It has a lot of moving parts, but I think that it's a good thing for our city because we're poised to do some great things. And I do have a specific question because I've been doing some research on it. As you know, every project has a different timeline, and it's important that projects are able to be formed and funded with their own CFDs versus being tied to another unrelated project. Will we be allowed, are we going to allow projects to form CFDs without being tied to other projects?
I mean, so single developers versus multiple developers together kind of thing? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
That's discussion here to have, but absolutely you can do that. There's efficiencies, certainly, to the development community. We don't theoretically care because our costs are going to be fully recovered through deposits and then ultimately the fees that we assess on the properties.
Right.
Like anything else, if you do 5 CFDs versus 1, it's going to be more expensive to ultimately the homeowners. You know, so there's
Right.
advantages.
It'll
But
be down
like
to
you're saying,
the person
if
buying the
you
property.
do it, but there's other ways you get around that too a little bit that are worth exploring later, that you do zones within the form CFD, and therefore Zone 1 issues now, that's where that developer, Zone 2 goes another way. So there are solutions there too, I believe.
So probably different scenarios then that we can probably discuss at length at our workshop?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nichol?
Yeah, thank you for this, and I can't stress that enough that the sooner we can begin the process of moving forward on this. I absolutely believe that the key to our city's recovery is going to be new home building, and the attraction of new residents and the expansion of our tax base in the city. I think we've lost a lot of it over the last couple of decades, and we really have to get to work now rebuilding that underlying fiscal infrastructure of tax-paying residents and getting those rooftops built in areas where we can begin moving the needle. But I have received comments from constituents asking whether or not if they wish to create their own CFDs. So existing residents, I know we're talking a lot of this in the context of new development, but I know that due to the fact that areas of our city have dilapidated infrastructure, and due to the fact that the city has, to some degree, some limited resources available to us on our own, what options, and would there be an option potentially for a neighborhood or a community within the city to consider developing their own CFD to install street lights, to improve their streets, to improve their sidewalks, to
Answer
address their
certainly
infrastructure
yes.
needs?
Whether CFD or LMD, et cetera, the CFDs are more expensive to form because they just require more work to set up, but they also give the flexibility to do more things. So if it was the more routine, basic infrastructure, street lighting and so forth, there probably are more cost-effective solutions. But yes, key is still because it takes a special vote of 2/3 majority, and so, it can't be, 5 vocal residents out of the house of, or the neighborhood of 20 people. It's got to be whatever 2/3 of 20. Sorry, I do think I panicked on it. 15 people out of the, or 14 people out of the 20 have to be able to vote yes. Numbers are not my thing, but the oh, that's right. Numbers are my thing. So,
It doesn't work in practice.
So, anyways, it's a harder time to get that vote. So, but as I said earlier, that it's usually the petition is from a development community, but it can literally be from a group of residents like that. It could be from the city forming. It doesn't have to be from a developer. And so,
So when do we anticipate something coming back?
We're thinking of it just the next couple of weeks. In fact, one of the things I wanted, once we've had a chance to answer the questions, we'll either schedule a separate meeting. The other thing, I'm already going to be asking you about a separate meeting as part of our strategic planning discussions that we've agreed to have, and so maybe we just extend that the day, but I want to get some feedback from the council. If there's not an opportunity to have a special meeting on this and we can't or don't feel that we should consolidate it with that strategic planning session that I'm hoping to get a date from all of you on for late October, early November, then we could try arranging our next council meeting so that we can to try to expeditiously address the items that we need to address and make sure we leave plenty of time to discuss this if that works better.
And I really think we have a matter of weeks, really. I
yes.
think given the fact that we've got some major projects that are ready to move forward, and it's really incumbent upon us to get to work to do what's necessary to get this done so these projects can move forward. I don't want to delay these projects if at all possible.
Right. And one of the reasons why we're encouraging within the next couple weeks, and if even needed, that we would try to create an agenda that's fairly light to allow you to have those discussions, because there are quite a few policy decisions that you'll need to make. Councilmember Valdivia asked a question, and really it depends, and it's really your call as to how you want to structure that to provide the safeguards you think are important for your community. So we're working on now kind of a decision tree, so you know what are those critical decisions that you need to make that will then allow us to go back and develop the documents that ultimately you can take action on.
Yeah, and I would like to make sure that when that item is brought forward, that the relevant stakeholders are made aware of that discussion so that we can ensure that whatever decisions are made that evening are most appropriate given what we're confronting. But thank you for the presentation. Very helpful. Thanks.
Councilmember Charette?
Well, just real quick, there's EIFDs, there's SCIPs, there's LMDs, there's a variety of acronyms out there that are all funding mechanisms to deal with development and infrastructure and what have you. I'm not sure I'm following the process here as to a workshop where we all can sit down and really understand all of these with presentations from the parties that are going to be impacted or that are requesting this of us. We did have I don't know if you were here then, Andrea, we had at the depot, a half-day seminar, workshop that was related to economic development and that, and it was quite helpful to have. We had 5 different companies come in and make presentations, and it seems to me that's probably what needs to be done here as well. Am I on the right track?
I think in a perfect world, if we had plenty of time, yes, you are. I think given the need here, though, what I would propose is that we try to address the CFDs, because, again, we need some policy direction from all of you, and the sooner we get that, then the sooner we can return with the documents that you will need to create.
Okay, but that wouldn't preclude us from at some later date looking at these other opportunities, these other mechanisms for funding.
That's right.
And getting some experts in to really help us. I mean, there was a hour's program up at, I was going to talk about it a little later, but at the League of Cities on EIFDs versus the SIP or SCIP programs. So that's all. It's just a matter of really us really clearly understanding the differences and understanding what's best for all parties concerned.
Right.
Ultimately, the homeowner, the developers, and it's not just homeowners, but it's all kinds of
Potential
development.
development.
So that's my concern, it's just that we do this. I agree with everybody that we should do it sooner rather
Yes.
than later and move on it as quickly as possible.
So I think what we will do at your next meeting, we will contact everyone's offices and try to schedule something as a separate meeting, but if not, we'll return at the next meeting to address really the issues that we need policy direction from related to the CFDs. We'll then come back with a discussion about LMDs, EIFDs, SKIP, and other programs, so you see what those opportunities are as well.
Okay. Thank you.
One of the other, excuse me, one of the other needs was also to look at some of our road infrastructure, especially along the 215 and the Palm Corridor that has a significant amount of deficiencies as far as being able to handle some of that traffic. So it may be incumbent upon us also to have that information available as we're discussing some of those, because there does need to be some improvements in that corridor. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Well, and
Does that conclude your?
And realistically, we also have to have the discussions about streetlights, because, there are improvements that need to be made to our community, and some of these mechanisms may be appropriate for those things that impact our city as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you, Brent. Appreciate your presentation. Next, we'll turn the time over to Councilmember Marquez and Councilmember Barrios for presentation to recognize the 13th annual Miss Cardinal participants.
Well, that was a very informative presentation. Did you guys take notes?
Let's quiz it.
We have something exciting. Every year, one of our schools does an amazing job because they have an amazing leader that's influencing young adults to become leaders in our community, and that's Jamie Flores. Jamie Flores, that's another guy. Jamie Rios is from San Bernardino High School, who's been putting the Miss Cardinal pageant together for 13 years now? 13 years now, and has created some tremendous quality people in our community. So we're here to recognize the new Miss Cardinal Court 2017-2018, and I'll let Honorable Miss Virginia Marquez take it from here.
Thank you, Councilmember Barrios. It was indeed a pleasure for myself and Councilmember Barrios to be judges about a week and a half ago for Miss Cardinal, and we started out with 24 candidates. I think it's the first time we've had that many. And I must tell you, it was quite incredible to see these amazing young women. Not only are they beautiful, they're smart. What a deadly combination. At any rate, I will be introducing two of them. And I'd like to start with a new category, Miss Cardinal Ambassador Diamond Dean. Can you please come up here? I will be reading the brief bio so you can see what she's all about. Beautiful gown and beautiful presentation delivery during the speech competition. Diamond Dean is in her senior year of school at San Bernardino High School. On Saturday, September 23rd, she was selected as Miss Cardinal Ambassador. Some clubs that Diamond is involved in include the following: leader of the Link Crew, Life Skills, secretary for Cardinal Buddies, and Asian Club historian. Diamond's plans after high school are to attend college to either become a teacher or a social worker. Some of the things she would like to do in her free time are to become a painter, a baker, and speaker to show children with disabilities that you can do anything, especially children with anxiety and selective mutism. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ms. Diamond Dean, Ms. Cardinal Ambassador.
I would like to say thank you for this award. The community helped me a lot in growing through Miss Cardinal, because when I first started it, Jamie and some other people here really know how quiet I was. Like, I wouldn't be up here. I wouldn't be speaking. I'd be like, no, I can't do it. But a lot of people helped me, and now I'm here, and it's helped me grow, and it's going to help me in my future, because I know I can do a lot more now. And thank you.
take a picture? Jamie, is Alexis Armendariz here? She is not. Okay. Alexis Armendariz is Ms. Cardinal's second runner-up, but she is not here tonight. However, I would like to still read her bio because I think that people need to know who she is and she can watch this on TV. Alexis Armendariz is a senior at San Bernardino High School. She has a 4.0 GPA and is involved in various clubs on campus such as Suburbans, Renaissance, Almas, the National Honor Society, and the Spanish Honor Society. After graduation, Alexis plans on attending either the University of Southern California or the University of California, Riverside. Alexis wishes to pursue a degree in biochemistry and hopefully advance her studies to get a master's degree in biochemistry. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give her a round of applause. Jamie, Mr. Rios, can you come up to receive her certificate on her behalf?
Well, unfortunately, again, I'm Jamie Rios. I'm the director and founder of Miss Cardinal from San Bernardino High School. Unfortunately, she had an emergency come up. It was actually a death in the family, and she really wanted to be here, but her mom called me and said, I can't be at two places at once, and so she really needed to be home with her family. Going back to the Miss Ambassador program, that had no bearing on the outcome of Miss Cardinal. It was a girl that I seen that she had potential, and I bet many people in this room could testify how much Diamond has grown. And I felt that she was deserving, regardless of what the judges, I mean, they made a good choice, but I just felt Diamond deserved that, and I think that this title will help her in her endeavors in life. So I'm very thankful, and she will do well during this year. Thank you.
And now I have the honorable pleasure to introduce the first runner-up, who, man, the pageant was very contentious. We got a lot of quality people that were up there, and when it came down to it, I knew definitely this person would be one of the top three. Brianna Roman is a 2017-2018 Miss Cardinal first runner-up. She's a senior at San Bernardino High School with a GPA of 3.4. She's involved in many clubs on school campus and participates in cheerleading and is on the girls' softball team. She loves volunteering in the community and spending time with her family. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you again Miss Cardinal first runner-up of 2017-2018, Brianna Roman.
First, I want to thank everyone who supported Jamie and this pageant. It's definitely been a wonderful, amazing opportunity competing for Miss Cardinal. The community service we did was so inspiring, and it's honestly giving me new goals in life of creating my own nonprofit. And the community service was just very humbling, and it brings you down to earth and sees the community that you have. And I want to thank Jamie again for putting this wonderful program together. Thank you.
And now, I know this person's been waiting anxiously. Our 2017-2018 Miss Cardinal. Let's hear it for Kimberly Leonardo. Kimberly's currently a senior at San Bernardino High School, and she's a 3-year varsity cheerleader, a 3-year ASB member. This year, she was elected as the Cardinal City Mayor, and won the title of Miss Cardinal 2017-2018. She's also a part of the National Honor Society and a proud 4-year member of Abbott. After graduation, Kimberly plans on attending San Diego State University to pursue a degree in sociology and, most importantly, continue to serve her community. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss 2017-2018, Miss Cardinal, Kimberly Leonardo.
Thank you so much to everyone. I know that the Miss Cardinal program receives a lot of support from our city council members and from our city, and I'm so thankful for your support. And those ladies that competed that night, they're all incredible, and I know that one day they'll be taking your seats, and one day we'll be the ones running the city, and I have a lot of hope for our youth, and I'm so honored to be able to represent Miss Cardinal, San Bernardino High School, but most importantly represent our city. And it's a beautiful place. I'm so thankful for every single day, that I get to wear this crown, and with lots of joy, and thank you so much for the love and support, and I'm going to make you proud. This isn't the last you see of me.
Just some final comments. There were 24 candidates, and then it came down to 10, and then 5 candidates. It was very nerve-wracking, and there was one question that was asked of the 5 candidates, and it went something like this. If you were in a position of power in the city of San Bernardino, what one thing would you change? They came up with, please address the homelessness, please clean our city, please have more love and tolerance in our city, and more programs for young people. So these young people will be tomorrow's leaders, and I jotted them down because I do listen, and I know all probably 3 of them will be sitting where we sit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And one final comment to the program is, I don't live in the city of San Bernardino, but the love that I have for the city of San Bernardino is beyond. I spend more time of my life here in San Bernardino than I do in my hometown. And it was very shocking to hear that we had over 355,000 people view Miss Cardinal. I mean, that's amazing to me. 5 minutes before the show started, we had 100 people waiting to come in with a sold-out seating capacity. So saying that we're not giving back to the community, we really are. We are out there getting our hands dirty. So I put this pageant on for these girls to shine. They get their hands dirty. They're working hard. They didn't have a summer off. They did community service all summer long, and that was my reward to them, to give back and let them shine that night. And I'm proud to announce I just broke record of 1 week after Miss Cardinal was crowned, I have 20 young men competing for Mr. Cardinal 2018. 20. But most in my history of. So every time I think I'm going to step back and let somebody else take the torch, they won't let me. So again, Mr. Cardinal 2018 will be April the 7th. Mark your calendars, April the 7th at the Sturgis Center for the Fine Arts. Thank you very much for having us today.
Thank you, Councilmember Barrios and Councilmember Marquez, and thank you, Jamie, for all your efforts. Next, we'll turn some time over to the chamber.
Good afternoon, or good evening. I'm Leslie Stevens, Director of Sales and Marketing for the Residence Inn here in San Bernardino, and also a board member of the San Bernardino Area Chamber of Commerce with our upcoming events for the next 2 weeks. But first of all, I want to use this time to give you a little bit of an update in the hospitality lodging community. We've made some terrific progress on an area that greatly impacts us, and that's the government rate per diem and how we work with that. In a nutshell, the government rate per diem is about half of what our published rates are. That's a real struggle for us in our community of how we manage and do our business. In the last couple of years, I've been actively on the search to find people that will help me understand or help us as a community understand how these per diem rates are reviewed and mandated. And our per diem rates here in San Bernardino have been the same since 2008. It just was unimaginable to me how anybody could expect us to do business in 2017 with rates that are been established since 2008. And Roxana has been greatly important from Assemblymember Eloise's office, and so has Joshua, led me to doing a lot of investigating, and now with the Ontario Convention and Visitors Bureau, Michael Krause is actively involved and seriously committed with his power and legislative force to help get these rates reviewed and raised, because, as you know, the transient occupancy tax that goes into our community, we are losing a tremendous amount of money of every piece of business that we book that we could be booking at a fair rate. Anyway, with that said, we begin a blessing of our furry and feathered friends this evening at 5:45 at the Humane Society Blessing of the Animals at their building at 374 Owen Show Road. On Friday the 6th at 6 p.m., the Community Hospital at St. Bernardine's hosts their medical, dice, and derby casino night at the National Orange Show. Saturday, October 7th, the San Bernardino Area Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with the City of San Bernardino, will be hosting the 5th annual Rendezvous Back to Route 66 car show downtown San Bernardino and Court Street Square, with over 1,000 cars registered, food and vendors, kids zone, open headers, cruising East Street, and parade of lights. This promises to be a fun-filled, nostalgic evening for all of the family. On that same evening in San Bernardino, Symphony Orchestra presents Musical Horizons at the California Theater of the Performing Arts on 4th Street in downtown at 7:30. Wednesday, October 11th, Big Hearts for Little Hearts, Oldies but Goodies, Dishes for Wishes takes place at the National Orange Show at 4:30 p.m. On Friday the 13th, Inland Empire Lighthouse for Blinds Golf Tournament and Poker Run takes place at the Arrowhead Country Club beginning at 11 a.m. And later that evening at the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians will be starting a powwow on campus of Cal State beginning at 5, which runs through Sunday, October the 15th. On Saturday, the 14th, the Salvation Army's 77 bicycle ride featuring our very own Carrie Davis begins at Court Street at 8 a.m. While later that evening, the Humane Society Halloween Party Casino Night at the auction takes place at their facility on the Orange Show beginning 5 p.m. Finally, don't forget to join us at the Chamber's monthly social networking lunch on on October 18th. This time it's going to be at the Mexico Cafe, 892 Highland Avenue. No fixed agenda, just eating and chatting with Chamber members, so join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that update. You'll pass the speaker slips. Gordon Nichols.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Gordon Nichols. I am the Senior Government Affairs Director for the Building Industry Association Baldwin Chapter here in San Bernardino. As you had mentioned before, I want to comment on the Community Facilities District overview discussion tonight. We did send a letter of support for the actions that were taken tonight and the direction that was given to staff, and we do applaud you for working with staff to come up with a CFD mechanism. We believe it's a very valuable and important tool. I'm just going to go ahead and read the letter really quickly. The BIA Baldwin Chapter's mission is to promote homeownership and strong communities by advocating for policies and practices that enable families to achieve the American dream of purchasing a new home. A community facilities district is a common development tool used successfully by many jurisdictions in California to help finance the cost of new development, such as streets, sewers, water, storm drains, and schools. Many cities and counties depend on CFDs to provide premium, affordable housing and a stable funding for ongoing maintenance. The City of Rancho Cucamonga currently has 15 CFDs, Ontario 13, Chino 19, Chino Hills 8, Fontana 36, San Bernardino County 5, Riverside County has 8. Local governments require a development and developer to install the necessary infrastructure, which the developer must pass on to the home builder at additional cost. The home builder pays more for a home upfront, resulting in higher mortgage and reduced affordability. A recent article in the Orange County Register found that 1 in every 5 Californians live below the poverty line, and California leads the nation in poverty, largely due to our high cost of housing. Without a CFD mechanism, San Bernardino homebuyers will be burdened with more upfront costs, resulting in higher mortgage payments and higher property taxes from the increased cost of homes. A CFD is a fundamental tool for economic development agencies to promote, attract, and encourage new development. The absence of a CFD policy and other pro-development policies place the city at a competitive disadvantage with neighboring cities. The BIA strongly recommends that the City Council direct the city staff, which I believe has been done, to establish an efficient and clear policy for allowing CFDs to be established in the city of San Bernardino. This is a critical element, I believe, for us, especially right now and being very timely. I wanted to echo the sentiments made by the Council that the urgency of this cannot be greater. Development comes in cycles and waves. And currently, for the last 5 years, we've been on an upcycle after a historic downturn. In 2016, the city of San Bernardino processed 96 residential permits. That's the most they've done in 5 years. 96 new homes were permitted last year. In the height of the market in 2005, though, you processed 500 permits. So you're still only doing 1/5 of what we did during the good times. So we're definitely on a track back, but we're definitely not healthy. I've got 3 seconds, so I'll just mention really quickly that not only do we want to attract new residents to San Bernardino, but we want to retain those who live here. As wages currently go to increase, losing those good residents to other cities as they opportunities to find new and attractive homes, we need to build more in the city of San Bernardino, and the CFD is the way to do it. We'll be here hand in hand with you moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a speaker slip from Brandon Carter. Was this to speak on an item on the agenda? No. This is for regular public comments? Yes. Thank you. That'll come later. Thank you. That concludes public speaking on the agenda items. We'll now move to our consent calendar.
I can show you on my email that I turned them in.
That's fine.
I turned them into the public comment one, too.
Just fill a slip in later. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Carmel Row, I wanted to speak about, I think it was 11A and maybe 16 or 18. 11A is regarding the home funds and how we're going to all of a sudden change from a loan to a grant. You know, I was at this meeting when we gave this money, and I wasn't happy about it. Okay, and then, so it's to purchase properties from the city of San Bernardino or maybe third parties. And then I guess it further goes on to say that we are going to go ahead and deed these properties over so the city isn't liable. And, you know, I can understand that. To me, that's understandable. But if you're just giving somebody $650,000 and then says, hey, they're required to comply and this and that, and then the letter at the bottom is signed by Ed Flores. Well, you know, we've already caught some problems with the community development block grant money. And I would like people to actually look at this and to actually be on top of this and to actually know where that $650,000 goes. How many families does it provide for? How many homes does it provide for? I mean, do we have some way that we are going to check and balance this stuff, especially now that we're not going to be getting it paid back? And if it was paid back to us, then that would be $650,000 that didn't go into a developer's pocket. That would go into, the city maybe redoing it again, and so our home funds. And so one after another, we might be able to see the homeless get off the street. So that's a problem. And then the other one is the one about what the city manager brought up, where we want to hire another consulting firm for $10,000 a month at about $120,000 a year. And I just want to tell you, I drive through the city every day, and I've been struggling with this in my mind. And I really want to put a public records request in and say how much money in the last 36 months have we spent on consulting fees. Because I'm going to tell you, if you drove around the city as much as I do, you could fix it without a consultant. And I'm just wondering how there's people that are here full-time and employed, and we have to keep hiring consultants and hiring consultants and hiring consultants when the problem is very evident. Okay? And if we are who we are and we are doing this job and we don't know how to fix this problem, then I'm under the impression that we don't drive through our community and that we don't know our community. Okay, because I drive through this community and I know this community, and this last week I put in 6 to 8 code enforcements on my GO request. Okay, I see the prostitutes on Baseline, that Golden Star Motel on G Street that they're prostituting little kids out of. I see that. I'm wondering how come nobody else sees these things, and then we hire outside consultants. What are they going to tell us? What are they going to tell us? Use your guys' own brain. All of you guys are smart. All of you are educated. Okay, all of you have had other jobs in your lifetime. I think that if you guys came together and maybe if you listened to the community, the people who stay up here, and stopped hiring those consultants, because we hired an image consultant maybe a year, 24 months ago. What image has changed? What image has changed? In my opinion, it's worse. Okay, it's worse when you see little girls being prostituted and nobody doing anything. It's worse when you see girls, pregnant women, prostituting and nobody doing anything. It's worse when you don't get all your nonprofits together and say, hey, let's do this, because there's a lot of people out there ready to help, but you use outside consultants, and I have a problem with that. Thanks.
One correction, I believe that those grant funds are paid back from the proceeds of the sale.
Diane Cotto is here to assist. This is really a mechanism because of a concern with liability during the process. And so if you want to have Diane address specifically the requests and the reason why we're proposing a change to this, it really is a shift in the liability exposure.
So you had a question? I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned earlier that the proceeds, or part of the mechanism is that the proceeds from the sale of the properties will be returned back.
That's correct.
And
The proceeds will go back into the program.
And then they're used and they're churned through the system again.
That's
Right.
correct.
That's the only question I have. Thank you.
Correct.
I think that concludes public speakers. City Clerk, did you have any others? All right, thank you. We'll now entertain a motion for the consent calendar. Well, excuse me, do we have any pulls? Councilmember Marquez?
Yes, I just have a question on 11A.
Councilmember Barrios?
None, sir.
Councilmember Valdivia? Councilmember Charette? Councilmember Nichol?
Item 16.
Thank you. Councilmember Richard?
None.
Councilman Mobile?
None, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Move the balance.
Thank you. We have a motion to move the balance. We have a second. Thank you. Please cast your votes.
I have a motion by Councilmember Charette, second by Councilmember Valdivia.
Mobile.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mobile.
Councilmember Barrios?
And I have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Item number 11 is adopt a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino, California, authorizing a revision to the original Home Investment Partnership Program loan agreement and Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services to implement the modular housing component of the infill housing program. Diane?
All right. So, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight, we're requesting the authority to adopt a resolution that would modify the original home agreement with Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services. The agreement sets aside $650,000 of home funds to build 3 single-family housing units, modular housing units, and then sell them to income-qualified homeowners, or households, excuse me. At the June 21st, 2017 City Council meeting, this item was approved, giving the city and MPH the authority to move forward with the development of this activity. As was mentioned earlier, we're requesting the change in the financial structure of this project. We would like to change it from a loan to a grant, and basically it's just to simplify the use of these funds. As was mentioned, any profit from the construction and the sale of these housing units will be used to cover MPH's development costs and to further MPH's mission of developing affordable housing throughout the city. Also, the second change that we'd like to have made is that we'd like to have MPHS maintain the ownership of the selected properties during the development phase, and basically that's for liability purposes. So with that, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Councilmember Marquez?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Diane, you've answered one of the questions that I had, and the second one is, why is it important that the NPHS be a CHOTO?
The importance of a CHOTO? A CHOTO is a Community Housing Development Organization. First of all, MPHS is a nonprofit organization, and CHOTO, that status, gives them the authority, or they are allowed to provide technical assistance to homeowners to help develop them into becoming viable home buyers. So that's the purpose of
I
the
see.
CHOTO.
So they have the expertise
Yes, they do.
to educate future potential homeowners to achieve the American dream.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nichols?
Several questions. So this $650,000 is intended to be used to construct 3 homes.
That's correct.
Okay. On packet page 108, paragraph states, properties to be developed will primarily be properties already owned by the city, but might include 1 or more properties currently owned by third parties. Explain that to me. What is that?
Correct. Right now, most of the housing stock that we'll be using for this project are units that we already own and that were given to the city as part of the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. So these properties now belong to the successor housing agency.
How many properties are we talking about?
Well, right now, we're just looking at 3. The number of properties that we received through the successor housing agency were over 100. So
this agreement only covers 3, or it covers more than 3?
This agreement covers 3 at this time. If we
and they
say
may or may not be city-owned properties?
Right now, they're targeted to be city-owned properties. Now,
do we have any guarantee that they will be city-owned properties?
Is there any guarantee? There is no guarantee, but right now the likelihood is 99.9% that they will be city-owned properties.
Why wouldn't they be city-owned properties? I mean, that's
There
the
is
whole
no reason
intent
for
of turning this into a grant, correct?
Well, right now, we have it in the agreement, so our purpose is to use city-owned properties, and that's what we're looking at first. But if there are other opportunities to purchase properties with these funds that are owned by third properties, we want to have the flexibility to do so. But
why
truly,
wouldn't we just keep it as a loan?
We're truly just looking at using using the city-owned properties for this purpose. Again, it's just to simplify the use of these funds.
Why wouldn't we just keep it a loan then? I'm struggling to understand the justification of converting this from a loan to a grant if there's no guarantee that the properties acquired through these funds will in fact be city properties, and the intent is to protect the city from liability that it currently has because it has such a large inventory of these properties. I'm just
We could
confused.
certainly, we'll enter into a site agreement each time that we develop a property, and it's certainly within our control to only use city properties. Staff wanted the
But
flexibility.
if I don't have a guarantee that these home funds will be used to redevelop these blighted city-owned properties, I'm sorry, but I can't support this.
We can come back to the council when we choose a site and want to develop it, and at that point, the council can have discretion over whether that site is acceptable to the city or not. In fact,
I just don't want to be handing $650,000 over to an agency, and they say, well, thanks for, giving us the opportunity to acquire these blighted properties from you, but we'd rather just spend the money on a third-party owned property and just use that.
No, as I said, it's not up to them. We have to enter into a site agreement, which is a bilateral agreement that both parties have to agree to. So we, in effect, have veto power over whatever the developer chooses. Not that we're expecting there's going to be friction on that point.
So everyone will come back to the council? Each one?
We can certainly do that if that's what the council wants us to do. The agreement doesn't provide that we'll come back to the council each time we enter into a site agreement, but that's certainly something we can do if that's what the council
And our
wants.
intent is to make sure that you know exactly where they're selecting the properties.
Yeah, I have to, if the whole intent here is to protect the city from liability. That sounds to me why we're requesting that this be converted from a loan program to a grant program, correct?
Yes.
That's why we're requesting that the city not maintain ownership
I
of
would
the
just take
properties.
out the third parties. Why would we even entertain that the funds could be used to purchase properties from third parties other than the city?
Those properties may be more desirable or more suitable for this kind of development than properties that we currently own.
But they aren't a liability issue to the city, though, correct?
They aren't a liability to the city because they would be purchased and the property would go to the developer who would maintain the ownership of the property throughout the construction phase, so that any liability that occurred because of the construction work would be on the part of the developer as property owner rather than the city as property owner.
And what it does to me is, I'm just getting so frustrated because my understanding was that when we started discussion on how best to allocate CDBG funds, it was really intended to be used as a mechanism, ideally, to develop those communities that are most distressed and most blighted, and that we begin focusing these funds. And now it sounds like we're just taking these funds and giving it to another agency. It's a county agency. It's not even a city agency. And it's up to them to determine what's best for our city. And I just think this is not an appropriate way for us to be using dollars that are really intended for us as a local government to determine what is the best use in terms of targeting those funds to areas of the city where we can make the most impact, and ideally focusing those funds in such a way that we improve the quality of life in particular areas where we have some of the worst cases of blight and distress. So I just don't see how this recommendation is consistent with that.
And I think what we're finding with the properties that were owned by the city is they are not necessarily in areas that I think you would be most concerned and want to have the greatest impact.
Well, I haven't even seen, have we even had that discussion of where we want to have the most impact?
And that's the point. We plan to bring those, as we identify the properties, we'll work with them to identify the properties and then bring those back to you so you see which ones they think have the most viability in the short term, and then you can approve those.
That they think have the most viability.
Well, we are certainly going to make a recommendation to you as well. So
I just think that this takes away control. I'm just having a real problem with this. I thought we came to an agreement some months ago on this, and my understanding was that, we have an item in our agenda this evening talking about strategic planning. Mm-hmm. We have a very, very limited pool of resources available to our city. Mm-hmm. And it just really troubles me when we just say, well, you know what, we just don't have the time and energy to figure this out right now. We'll come up with some agreement. We'll just grant it to another agency, and hopefully they'll come back to us with something that we're agreeable to. I
And I don't agree that that's what we're doing. I think what we're suggesting is we want to have a program that's structured in a way that minimizes the risk exposure to the city. We recognize that.
And I would agree to that if there was exclusivity that the properties be city-owned properties. But what I'm reading here says, no, that's not the case. It isn't exclusive.
And in part, it's because as we're working through that list of 100 or more properties that were purchased.
Why does this have to be done now instead of after we have our strategic planning session to determine if there is perhaps a higher and best use of these funds and where they should be allocated? What is the rush to do this?
These are home funds, not CDBG. Home funds have to be used for home ownership to build affordable housing.
I understand that. And this, we have to do this before we have our, several months ago, we had a long conversation that the city has always been in this mode, well, we have to spend these monies because we don't have time to adequately plan and develop a strategy in terms of how best to do it. And now we finally have an item tonight, and I thank you for that item. But now it seems like just before we vote on that item, we're having a major shift in terms of what we decided several months ago. And now we're saying, well, we just have to get this money spent, and we'll hopefully we'll figure this out as we go along. But I just think
But we aren't suggesting that it has to be spent now. I mean, so if you prefer that you look at the list first, we can certainly bring that to you. You aren't being asked to do this because we certainly want to get those funds out into the community because we do think that this can have an impact on our neighborhoods. But we also want to provide the flexibility to the council. Some of the properties that are owned by the agency may not necessarily be in the areas that you want to have the impact in. So it may require, if you really
I would feel much more comfortable having this conversation after we've had our strategic planning session, and all of us have a very clear idea of what is the plan. I don't know what the plan is, other than we'll figure out a plan at some point.
I'd like to move to continue it.
You're out of order.
Yeah, I would like to move to
I have a question
You
for.
can't, Mayor. You can't move this table. No,
We don't-
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, he has to continue it.
I
Okay.
apologize.
This program is essentially what was previously adopted
Correct.
with the same housing partner,
Yes.
correct? So there's no change in that.
No.
So the program was already adopted by the council, and the only change here is changing it from a loan to a grant. Is that correct? So that
That's-
previously,
That's correct. In this project,
the
it's also-
Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services was previously identified. Is that correct?
That's
So we're
correct.
not making any change to that. So this was an
No.
already approved process, and the home loans were already earmarked. They were just going to be a loan.
Right.
And this allows for the transfer of the ownership to the developer, so that then the city, during that development phase, is not responsible for the liability of something that may have occurred during that development, correct?
That's correct. And this project is also consistent with the housing strategy that was adopted in April 2017.
So this isn't just coming before the board at this, or the council at this time.
I would respectfully ask that you review the video of the discussion that took place in June, because there was actually a very specific discussion about the need to begin a strategic approach to how we utilize these funds and develop this partnership. And what this looks like is a whittling away. When I read this language, it looks like we're just saying, well, we have properties, and I completely agree with that approach. And I think we need to be consistent with that approach, that we need to ensure that we have ideally some degree of control over how these funds are used, and that is ultimately tied to a strategic plan. And I have not seen a plan. When Mr. Flores was here, he completely agreed. And I would welcome anybody to review the video of that meeting in June, where we discussed this in quite some depth. And Mr. Flores specifically stated he agreed that we need to have a strategic approach to this. But I'm not seeing that in what's been brought forward tonight, and I just think that it would be more appropriate that now that we are moving forward, and it looks like we will hopefully tonight have some movement on how we now start the process of really laying forward a strategic vision and plan for a city and using these very limited resources that are available to us, including the properties that the city owns, and finding the highest and best use to utilize those limited resources in a way that improve the quality of our community for our residents. And I think it's our obligation to do that, and I have some real problems with this coming forward tonight at the very brink at which we are going to start the discussion and begin the process of that strategic planning. I think this would be better dealt with immediately after we have that discussion. So there's clarity. And I don't see anybody from the county here representing this organization tonight to give us their thoughts, and that troubles me as well, that we really need a partnership here, and it just sounds like we're just once again saying, well, here's this money here, go spend it, figure it out. Hopefully you'll come back with something that we'll be amenable to without a plan in place. And to me, that's not what I understood we agreed to in June when we had this conversation.
Diane, the language that was included in this when it was previously adopted, did it also have the third party?
It also included that
There's no
language.
change to that.
No, there
This
is not.
essentially is the same
This is
that
the
was
same
brought
document.
forward previously, and it doesn't prohibit
Correct.
the strategic plan from coming forward in the future to be able to then identify those.
And again, we will have to approve all sites. So it isn't the county, we aren't abdicating our responsibility to the county. In fact, quite the contrary, I think the county staff would tell you that we're playing a much more critical role in decisions related to San Bernardino.
What language can we include in here to ensure that these are brought back to us?
You don't have, I understand you, but you don't have the floor right now. Councilmember?
I think the question was, what language could we include? We can certainly include language that you'd like to see the sites that are selected and alternative sites that, once the developers had a chance to look at those, that you want to have formal ability to approve those in a public meeting.
Okay. I'd like to hear thoughts of mine.
Are you finished? All right. Councilman Valdivia?
Ms. Cotto, what exacerbated the issue here that you needed to bring the issue back to us? What prompted the discovery of this issue here that you necessitated it bringing it back to council?
Was really the ownership of, the way that ownership is held for these
And who brought that to your
properties.
attention?
We were looking at it in July, and when Kathy Brand, our housing manager, came on board, we had a further discussion and decided that that would probably be the better way to hold title of the properties, to give that ownership to MPHS for a temporary set time through the development process, and then transfer those properties to the qualified home buyer at a given time.
So prior to Ms. Brand, you were responsible for this?
We were looking at that, yes.
I'd like to move to continue this. If the language needs to be added and there needs to be a list, which you're agreeing to, is that right, Ms. Miller?
Yeah, our goal has been to
Okay.
provide a list to you. We're calling for those properties now.
Can we do that without compromising the matter
It's
here?
not really necessary to add language to do that. The site agreement is a separate agreement, and unless you authorize the city manager to sign site agreements at her own behest, which the resolution doesn't ask you to do that, then the city manager and staff would be obliged to bring back to you any site agreement that they propose to enter into, and you'd be free to reject it or accept it at that time.
Well, I think the other issue is the strategic aspect of the looking forward component here. If, in fact, the council, without objection, has given and provided direction back in June that we should have a strategic lookout on CDBG funding and home funding, then I think it's really the prerogative of the council that staff members take heed to what we say.
Ms. Dawn,
Well,
if we already have in place this, and we don't take this action, the loan is what now governs, correct? Because that's already been approved.
Yes.
Correct.
And
Correct.
which is the riskier formula
Yes.
for the city.
Yes.
And is this the common practice in these types of transactions with other communities that are expending home funds?
I think it's mixed.
It is mixed. The federal government gives you the opportunity to decide what financial structure that a project would take. So it is mixed. Sometimes you see loans, sometimes you see grants.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Valdivia, you're suggesting a continuation of this?
There's support.
Councilman Schroeder?
Just a question of what's the impact of a continuing this item?
Well,
What are we going to achieve from it?
This company, I would assume, would not then, or this agency would then not be out looking at the properties. They're currently doing assessments on properties and things, so I would assume that they would not be doing that, so it would delay ultimate.
Yes, that's true. There is a delay. Note that when we approved this agreement back in June 21st, 2017, there is a one-year clock that starts ticking. We have a year's time in which to implement or start construction on these activities. So that would impact the project.
It sounds to me that we've got control when it comes back on for site approval, and I don't see any reason to continue it. I won't support continuing it.
Councilman Overhill?
I agree with Councilman Charette. I think that we will have discretion when it's brought back. Hopefully with, if there are non-city-owned properties, that we have at least some sort of an idea of what the decision-making process was for doing that. And so, again, I wouldn't support a continuance either.
Councilmember Marquez?
I just want to be clear on this, Diane. We're just changing the financial structure. That's it. Nothing else.
Nothing else.
Okay. I will not support continuing this item. I think we talked about a half hour.
All right, so we need a motion. We have a second? We have a motion and a second?
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Well, yeah, or I guess, right, because it failed.
Yeah, it failed. There was no second for it.
There was no,
Right.
okay, so yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Please cast your votes. Councilmember Charette and Councilmember Charette moved it, and Councilmember Mulvihill seconded.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Charette and a second by Councilmember Mulvihill. And the vote is 6-1 with Valdivia opposed.
Thank you. Next is item 16. This is to adopt a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of San Bernardino authorizing the city manager to execute a 3-year professional services agreement with Worthington Partners for consulting services related to strategic planning and organizational development. City Manager?
Mayor, members of the council, during the discussions related to the appointment of the city manager, we had agreed that strategic planning and team building and really efforts to change the paradigm, the ways we operate within this organization are really critical to our future success. As the council requested, I did reach out to several consultants that do this type of work with city councils, with executive staff members, and given the unique circumstances that we have, I thought it was really critical after discussions with many of you that we have someone that really has very identifiable and demonstrated success in dealing with communities that are in the process of transforming themselves. After speaking with several people, I did contact Greg Devereaux of Worthington Partners. Greg, as the council and the community are aware, was our former CEO. Greg also served as the city manager with the cities of Fontana and Ontario, both cities that, if you look back over their history, have also had a history of challenges, and maybe more critically are now in cities that are prospering and are really changing the complexion of their communities. They've done some remarkable things, and so we felt it was important to identify a consultant that really had that broad breadth of experience. So we're recommending this evening that you implement a professional services agreement with him, authorize me to execute that agreement. Under the terms of this agreement, Mr. Devereaux would be available to us on a retainer. His primary focus would be on interviewing the council members and developing these series of strategic planning sessions that we've talked about. But I also think he has the potential to do some mentoring within the city organization, because it's important that once the council defines the paradigm changes that you want to see in the organization, the changes to our culture, the development of a true vision, and really some strategic goals and objectives, then it's important that we begin to convey that throughout the organization. The fact of the matter is we have a very large organization with a culture that is going to require significant work. So I'm recommending that you enter into this agreement with him. He would be available to us, again, primary focus with the council, and then secondarily in dealing with the executive staff and then the team members beyond that to change the culture of the organization.
Thank you. Councilman Nichol?
Yeah, and I thank you for bringing this item forward, because I think this, as was mentioned in the prior comments, it has been enormously frustrating as we have wound our way through a very lengthy and difficult bankruptcy to see our city languishing while all around us cities are prospering. People are doing well. Communities are thriving, and we're sort of this odd duck in a sea of prosperity that's happening all around us. And I certainly have a great degree of respect for Mr. Devereaux. He and I have had differences, obviously. There's been differences of opinion on certain major actions that we've taken as a council and as a city, but I do not question his professionalism and his credentials. I think, as you noted, everywhere he has gone, every major jurisdiction he has advised has done well, and done well by his advice. And so I do support this item, but I do have a question. It was raised by several constituents. Mr. Devereaux was the CEO of the county.
Yes.
And is currently under contract with the county as well, correct? Okay, and there were some concerns. I know that we as a council have expressed some concern and perhaps some need to at some point discuss and evaluate the annexation agreement that was part of the fire annexation,
right,
and the property tax component of that agreement. And clearly there is going to be a potential, if not perceived, if not real, of a potential conflict between the interests of the county, which would be ideally to preserve that revenue and that ability to maintain that property tax revenue, and that of the city, which is to ensure that we have some degree of accessibility to that revenue as we rebound and recover from our bankruptcy. So how and what has been done? Is there an issue of potential conflict? How might that be addressed in the context of this agreement?
A couple of things. We do recognize that there are a whole host of issues that are different today than what were contemplated at the time that we entered into that agreement. And certainly we were in a different position then in terms of our financial structure, our bankruptcy, and we had a whole host of other issues on our plate. But there have been some changes from the county's perspective as well. The county fire department now has assumed responsibility for Upland. There are a number of other studies being contemplated or are in the process that would then change the structure of the fire department and provide further economies of scale. So, and others. So we've identified a whole list of things that are different than what was really originally contemplated at the time that we entered into that agreement. I have started having conversations with the county about the need to revisit some of that. I think ultimately, and I have had conversations with Mr. Devereaux, but also with county staff that are currently still county staff members and would be involved in the future negotiations. I think that there's an agreement on all of our parts that there are changed circumstances on both sides that necessitate having further discussions. And really, at the end of the day, it's important that they are successful, and it's also important that we're successful. And so I wouldn't necessarily see this being a conflict for Mr. Devereaux. I certainly wouldn't have him at the table with me as I have that discussion, but I think he could be an advisor on both sides, just helping to understand the facts and the changed circumstances. So again, I don't perceive that to be a conflict, because I think it's in our best interest that the county fire department is successful, and certainly it's in the county's best interest that we change the dynamic in this community, because I agree with your comments. I've worked for some very successful organizations, and it's doable. I think I've said to all of you, there is no reason why this is not a world-class city, and we can do it, and I know we can do it. It's having the right team in place, and part of that team are consultants that can come into this organization with a particular level of expertise and assist us in developing those new paradigms. For this community to be successful, we've got to change the way we operate as an organization, and I certainly appreciate, I don't like the impact of some of these other things on our community, and I agree with that, and we will need to address those, but we've got to start with our team here and with the leadership that we provide. So I think Mr. Devereaux is particularly suited for that, given that he has success in other communities, and in areas where I perceive that there's a conflict, I will certainly not engage him in those kinds of discussions. I don't see the fire one being one, because again, we both need to be successful, and they're more successful, we're more successful, and really vice versa.
All right. I will move to approve.
It's already been moved. We just need a second. Would you like to second it? Thank you. Councilmember Barrios.
Thank you, Mayor. Andrea, have we had a vision created for us before in the past?
It's my understanding that there are a couple of visions, and we have some record, and I can certainly ask the city clerk to spend a little more time, but we don't see a current vision that was actually adopted by the council, really more discussion. And so if you're aware of something, again, but I would venture to say it's important that this group have that discussion again, to make sure that that vision is consistent with where you are today and really where you want to have the city be in the future. I see this, though, I don't want to marginalize this process in any way, though. This is not just about creating a nifty vision statement that's going to go on the wall of City Hall. This is a much more complex process, and, quite frankly, I've said to several of you individually, there's probably going to be some gnashing of teeth and open discussions and debate and dialogue, and that's an important thing for us to do, because it is really more about creating paradigms and ways we operate as much as it is really having a common collective vision for what we see in terms of our future for this community.
And I have two more questions. Will he be completely committed to the city, or is he working and advising in other areas, other cities?
His company does advise other agencies. He does try to keep a limited number of agencies so that he can provide the time and attention to all of them. I would envision that given the depth of the challenges and issues that we have in San Bernardino, I would anticipate that a lot of his time and energy is going to be spent here. I do believe that, and I think this just comes from being a city manager and being that type of person, I believe he is going to want to ensure that any community that he's working with is very successful. Mm-hmm. And given the fact that we probably need a boot camp, I think a lot of his time and attention is going to be spent here with us.
So how many hours do you assume he may be working with us, the city, on a monthly basis? Because I just want to make sure that he is the man for the job, right, but that we get the most bang for our buck.
I will tell you, without him being paid, I probably have been spending just on working through what we envision for this series, because remember, the other thing to point out in this agreement is, and we've talked about this in the past and agreed, this needs to be a long-term commitment. We certainly can terminate the agreement, but I don't think it serves us well to have a consultant come in for one meeting and then have a different consultant each year. This is really part of, we talk about strategic long-term, this is a long-term relationship where we're engaging someone to work with us on an ongoing basis. We've agreed that at a minimum it needs to be a couple times a year. I actually think that if I can get us up to 4 and 5 times a year, I think that that's actually more important. And certainly when we're viable and healthy and we see very positive things happening in our city, maybe we don't have to be at 4 and 5 times a year in years 4 and 5. But I certainly do think very early on there's a lot of time that is going to be needed. But I will share with you that without being compensated, he and I spend a lot of time talking, usually on my travels to and from work, but he's committed a lot of time to this community already. So I think the number of hours will be dependent on the kinds of things that we have him doing, but I've already identified a whole series of things that I would like to see in terms of our discussions with the council, and for that matter, with the staff, that will take several weeks in terms of total time out of any given month. And that's why we looked at the number and felt it was reasonable, given the fact that I would anticipate some months to be significantly higher and some months would be a little bit lower as he's doing more work in preparation for upcoming sessions and discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bouchard.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. You know, as a longtime county employee, you know, I was there when Mr. Devereaux came aboard, and I'm excited for the city to, especially to be able to create a vision plan and to hold up to that vision plan. And it's always great to hold your staff accountable and have pride and make sure you come to work and on time and do your job. So I think that when Greg came aboard, we saw that change in the county, and I am supporting this, and I appreciate him for even the thought of coming to try to help the city out, and I'm excited and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to the change.
Councilman Schmidt.
Greg Devereaux is the consummate professional, and he wouldn't be taking us on unless he thought he could be impactful and have an impact here. And it's not a matter of how many hours. It's I used to always say it's work smart, not hard. And he is about as smart as they come. I hope you're listening, Greg. You know, he knows he knows the region. He knows the players. He made a commitment to one evening, kind of in private, to the mayor and I at an event that says, "I'm here to help." I don't expect him to do it for free, and I believe in paying people for what they do, and I believe that whatever we're paying him, I think it's $10,000 we're looking at right now. I would be willing to bet that we'll get more than double that in value from him just because of who he is, what he knows, and his reputation. Yes, we've got a vision plan. I think I've got it on my shelf with all the others that we spent 3 days at the Orange Show back in about 2010, Terry's nodding that is that the right year, 2009 or 10? And it was great. Papers all over the walls, 3 days back and forth, and everybody rah, 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 and camaraderie. And that went on for, like, I think it was a Friday, a Saturday, and even a half day on Sunday over a weekend. And that was, I'm sorry, thank you, Jim, you took the words out of my mouth. On Monday, we all went back to work, and it went on the shelf. Actually, it took a while to print it, and it was handed out. We went through it, and it was heavy and weighty and all that. So we've done them, and everybody's done that. Everybody's done workshops and come up with plans that they don't implement. So I don't think that either you, Andrea, or Greg will allow us to go through this process and not implement what we set out to do. And the plan, whether it was last year or back in 2010, as far as I'm concerned, we should be looking at a new plan because we got new players and we got a new set of rules and a new set of circumstances here. And I think it's critical that we start kind of fresh and take this on. And I, too, am very excited about this. And if you say at least 4, maybe 5, I'd go for 6 or 7 or 1 a month and cut our meetings, cut our council meetings in half to 1 a month and have work sessions the other meeting a month.
Because something, just to expand on something that Councilmember Charette said, all the plans in the world are not going to change the dynamic in this community. It's really about all of us committing to change the way we operate with one another and then developing a collective vision. And it does take a lot of work and a lot of reminders, and that's why I do think it's critical. We can't just adopt it and then be done with it and assume it's going to happen. It's going to require all of us making the effort to make it happen. And so I do I do appreciate the commitment that you're willing to make to ongoing discussions, because I do think it's going to be a constant work in progress, and why I think it's so critical to have the same facilitator here with us, because I hope that we start to take steps forward, and certainly we may take a step or two back, but we've got to have the same facilitator that's going to at least know where we've been and where we're going, and then what progress we've made along the way, because certainly we should celebrate where we've had some successes along the way, and I don't know that we do enough of that. There are some great things happening in San Bernardino. They get overshadowed by all the other things that go on, so there is a time for us to step back and congratulate ourselves on where we are, if for no other reason than to motivate us to take the several next step forward that we're going to need to take. So having someone that has a relationship with us on a long-term basis, has a long-term commitment to this organization, can help do the reminders that I do, because it's going to take all of us checking ourselves, reminding, reinforcing the cultural changes that we've agreed to, helping to remind when we make a change in terms of the paradigm and the way we operate, we're going to inevitably take a step away from that or have some transgression, and we all need to be on the same page that we're going to correct that and then continue to move forward as one team of people, not 8 separate perspectives on where we're going. So I think this is the perfect facilitator for us. I also hope Greg's not watching since I said perfect, but I do think that this is the kind of person that we need, and certainly one of the things I was going to announce at the end of the meeting, we are fortunate we did hire Terry Ladeau to come back as our Assistant City Manager. She's in the audience today, and we're excited.
Welcome back, Terry.
Many of you know Terry. She has almost 20 years of experience with the City of San Bernardino, has a great reputation in the community, was very well liked, and was able to get a lot of things done. But we're getting the right team in place. We need to now have the right facilitator to help then move the ship forward.
In 2015, it's my recollection that we did go out to the community and identify the goals that the community set forward for us. And then we put together this body, a group of 17 community members, to craft those, to take that information and that data that was identified by going out to the community. We crafted those goals. We submitted them with the plan of adjustment. Greg Devereaux was one of those 17 members, and so he very well knows of some of the progress that we've made. One of those was the change of the charter, which helps to put us on a more level playing field with other communities. And so those are some of the steps that we've taken to be able to put us in the position where we are today, where we're able to start recruiting talent. The police department has been able to stop the bleeding of the loss of officers, and last year and this year continues to provide a net increase in the police department. Additionally, we made some changes to redo our financial structure so that we made available those resources to the police department, because one of those priorities was public safety, and making sure that we made the resources available for the public safety to be able to make those changes. And so we've made some significant progress, and now moving forward with a more refined strategic plan where we continue to make the city better, for instance, with the CFDs that's been put forward to us and with the housing program. And so with that, I'd like to have a second, or a motion. Do we have a motion in a second?
7-0.
It's done, Mayor.
All right, very good.
On item
All right.
16,
and
the
thank
motion-
you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor. On item 16, the motion was made by Mr. Charette. It was seconded by Mr. Nickel and several others, but we're putting Mr. Nickel on the record, and it passed 7-0.
Thank you. Next is item 17. This is to conduct a public hearing on the proposed vacation of a portion of I Street south of Rialto Avenue and those portions of east-west alleys and one north-south alley between Rialto Avenue and 3rd Street. This public hearing is now open. Do we have any public speakers, comments? Anybody? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments from the council? No. Please cast your votes.
On item 17, the motion to approve was made by Mr. Charette, the second by Mr. Valdivia, and the item passed 7-0.
Thank you. The public hearing is now closed.
Good job.
Very nice. Ryan.
Next is item number 18, adopt a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of San Bernardino approving the first amended and restated Theater Square Development Services Agreement with AECom Technical Services and the Franzen Company and approving certain related actions.
Mayor, members of the council,
Approval on that, let's hear it.
before
I'm still moving approval.
Before you move and approve, and before Mark starts his presentation, I want just to make a comment and then ask Mark to do something. As the council's aware, for some time we've been working to redevelop the Carousel Mall and the Theater Square sites, and there are opportunities to relate those two projects because of some of the benefits that we derive from them. But I thought it might be, and we have two items before you this evening. We plan to come back to you at a future meeting with some additional items and actions that will be necessary to take, for the council to take, and give you a full report on where we are. As the council's aware, we are still addressing some potential legal issues there, and we're not really prepared to address those with you this evening, but we will at a subsequent meeting based on the direction that was provided to us in a recent closed session. But I thought it might be helpful because it has been some time. If maybe Mark could introduce, we have several of the team members from AECom Franzen and our outside attorney that's been engaged by the city, and so I thought it might be helpful just to reintroduce the council to those players. Some of them have changed slightly with respect to some of the developers. So, Mark.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Andrea. I'll start by, first of all, introducing Tom Clark. I think most of the council members know Tom. He's been here providing legal, outside legal counsel to the city and to the former redevelopment agency, and Tom's been a very integral part of the team. And then on the AECom Franzen side, there's John Franzen, who has been with the city for this project, I should say, on this project now for a couple of years. And then Susan Ambersini, she is new on the project with AECom. Vaughn Davies, who I think most of the council members know. Vaughn Davies had a tremendous opportunity to start a local practice in Los Angeles, so he's still involved with the project. We've talked to him I've talked to him a couple of times. I know the AECom folks are talking to him as well, but on a day-to-day basis, it's really going to be Susan and John that are going to be taking over where Vaughn was. It's a huge loss, I think, because Vaughn does have a lot of interest, but certainly Susan has a real passion for urban development and for cities, and that's certainly what we need in order to be successful on this project. So we're certainly not going to lose anything. It's just different people that are helping guide the process.
And then, who's not here tonight, Kathy Brand has been added to this group because of her economic development background. And then Terry will assume my role as the assistant city manager on the project.
And I think there's already been a motion, so I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't have a PowerPoint. I think I can talk for 45 minutes if people would like.
I don't really want you to talk for 45 minutes, but I think walk through really what they have before them.
Sure.
The next two items really are the same. They're together. They're both related to this. Yes. But they are two really separate actions that we're requesting that the council take. And so maybe if you could just walk through
Absolutely.
Those and what we're asking
Yes.
of the council and how it relates to the actions that they've already taken.
Certainly. I'll start with the most recent city council action on August 16th. On August 16th, the City Council approved an amendment to the Theater Square Master Plan, and the amended plan allows an additional 33,000 square feet of restaurant and retail space to be built around Regal Theater. Again, Regal Theater that property is within the top quartile, the top 25% for all Regal properties nationally. So it is a very valuable asset. It's bringing in consistently about 700 to 800,000 moviegoers a year, and the addition of new restaurant and retail space around that will only help to grow the moviegoing audience. So that was an action the council took on August 16th. The two items that you have here tonight, the first is an amended and restated development services agreement for Theater Square. The biggest change to this is to change it's still a 4% What AECom and Franzen are working on is typically referred to in the development business as a success fee. In other words, they don't get paid if the project doesn't move forward. So in the original development services agreement, they were receiving 4% of the gross sales. This amended agreement changes that to 4% of net.
I think that it was
I'm sorry,
initially
the other way around.
net proceeds,
Net
and now it's
proceeds,
changing
yes.
it to gross proceeds.
That's really the biggest change that's contemplated or is in this agreement, and it really is fair to compensate them fairly for the work that they have done. We have been meeting twice a month for quite a long period of time, and again, they don't get paid if the project isn't successful. So that's really the change that is before the City Council in the amended and restated Development Services Agreement.
Thank you. Councilman Shred?
I could be really way off on this, but wasn't there something about AECom paying us to have the exclusive right, and that wasn't fulfilled for some reason because we weren't fulfilling our side or something, and it went into abeyance or something? And have we restarted that? How does that work in here?
It actually has not. You are correct, Council Member. When we had the exclusive negotiating agreement, it's very typical in an ENA where the developer pays the public agency a fee for the right to negotiate. In the original ENA, they were to pay $10,000 a month for up to 8 months. The former deputy city manager waived that fee after receiving about 2.25 months. So we received $22,500, and then that agreement was at a staff level, although staff didn't have authority. That was revised. However, that was fixed when the council approved the First Amendment to the ENA, and what the First Amendment to the ENA says, and the council approved that, I don't have the date right in front of me, I think it was in April. It held that $10,000 a month fee until the reciprocal easement agreement is removed. So because on Carousel Mall, there is a reciprocal easement agreement, and again, the two properties are tied, Theater Square and Carousel Mall. So until the reciprocal easement agreement is removed, and that's what the city manager alluded to with the Harris Company, ECI, we're still working to resolve that. Once that REA is removed, then yes, those payments would resume.
So we've received, it was going to be up to 8 months.
That
We've
is
received
correct.
about 2 months.
That is correct.
And then it stopped.
Yes.
And so once we get that reciprocal agreement done.
Right.
And I have thoughts on that, but I won't comment tonight. Then those payments per month start again for up to 6 months more?
That is correct, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Marquez?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to refresh our memory, Theater Square includes the Regal Cinema, the parking, and what else?
Theater Square is 5.5 acres of property. It includes the California Theater, the surface parking lots around Regal, and then the Regal building itself. And within the Regal building, some of you may recall, there's the operating theaters. There's 14 theaters.
Yes.
And then there's some empty theater boxes actually at the front of the building. When it was Cinema Star, when it was originally constructed, Cinema Star had more screens. When Cinema Star went bankrupt and Regal came in, Regal reduced the number of movie theaters, the boxes. So there are some empty ones, about 9,000 square feet, a little over 9,000 square feet. That will be converted into restaurant and retail space. So that 9,000 square feet of existing vacant floor area is part of the 33,000 that the council approved back in August.
I see. The California Theater is not part of that?
Not a part of that.
Okay, but we have
It's
separate
part-
plans.
It's part of the Theater Square, and
Right.
certainly there's a value to that potential energy that's created.
Right,
But in
right.
terms of sale, we would not sell the California Theater.
Good,
That
along
is
with
correct, yeah.
Sturgis.
Along with Sturgis.
Got it.
Yes,
Okay.
they will remain as public assets.
I see. Has there been a motion yet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Councilman Nichol.
So what are we looking at now in terms of a timeline for the Theater Square development? Where are we at with all this? I get a lot of questions. Folks want to know. I'm all for ensuring that we pay people an appropriate amount based on the services they provide. But the bottom line is we've got an asset that we need to use to leverage future development downtown. And
Yes.
the longer we wait, the more opportunities kind of slip away from us. So what's the plan?
we agree with that, council member. I can tell you that myself and the city manager were very, very focused on getting this project done. AECom and Franzen, they don't get paid. Again, this is a success fee.
Right.
So to date, they have not been paid. So they're probably the most interested people in the room because they've been working a lot of hours and putting in a lot of time without any pay. So we are very, very focused on this. We absolutely want to get this done.
Do we have any progress to report? Do we
Well,
have any-
item 19 actually is a significant step forward because hiring a commercial broker allows the sale to go forward. One of the many things that we've done is the AECom Franzen team, they've been out talking to commercial developers. So there is a lot of development interest to purchase the property, but we wanted to bring on a commercial broker to help that sale. We anticipate, if item 19 is approved and Lee is engaged, they're anticipating that the Regal Theater property could be sold by the end of the year.
And I think it's important, over the last several months, we've done some things to the structure of our arrangements out there with our tenant that add value to that. Really, our goal is to maximize the value of that property because, as the council will recall, that really is the funds that we intend to use to help with other development projects in the downtown area.
So the buyer will actually be constructing that additional restaurant space, the 30,000?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And so we anticipate now, is this being actively marketed? I know we've had issues with exclusive agreements in the past, and whether or not those properties have been aggressively marketed to the degree that we would like to see. What's being done really? I know that the last 3 days there was a major event down in L.A.
ICSC.
ICSC.
And
Are
John,
we engaged in any of those? Are we participating? Are we aggressively marketing our city?
As a city team, because we don't have, until recently, an economic development staff, John Franzen is a retail expert.
So we haven't been at ICSC.
Well, John has been there, and John's been marketing this property very, very aggressively. And then he's also brought in to meet with the city manager and myself a number of potential tenants. So while nothing has been signed because it hasn't been officially put on the market yet, there is very, very strong interest out there because what developers really want is they want a Class A tenant with a long-term lease that pays every single month. And that's what they have in Regal. And again, that's what adds value to this project, and that's what makes this so valuable to a potential developer. So I hear your frustration. As somebody that's been working on this project for a while, I'm frustrated as well. But we have made good progress. I know the community doesn't see that progress, so I understand people want to see sticks coming out of the air. They want new places to go for lunch or dinner, and it's coming.
I hear it from many of the employees I work with.
Yeah.
There's nothing downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not to say we don't have places to eat, but, I mean, people want some variety. And
I'm
I
here
think that
5 days a week, so
we're
I
long
feel your
overdue
pain.
for that increase in downtown activity that's really is part and parcel of this. So I support this, but again, time is of the essence on a lot of this. I think we're moving forward, and I'd like to just communicate that is really our focus, is to be a partner and, compensate you appropriately, but let's get this done, let's get this past the finish line, and let's have something that we can really be proud of this time next year, that we're looking at something that's really transforming our downtown.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
On item 18, the motion to approve was made by Mr. Charette, the second by Mr. Mulvihill, and the item passed 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Next is item
Go
19.
ahead. Yes.
This is to adopt a resolution of the Mayor and City Council approving the exclusive right to represent owner for sale or lease of real property of Lee and Associates Commercial Real Estate Services related to Theater Square and approving certain related actions.
And this is related to the item that we just discussed. This is the actual broker that we're recommending this evening that the council engage to allow us to actively market the Theater Square site.
Thank you. Councilman Valdivia?
What was the basis and criteria for selection of this particular individual?
We actually interviewed 3 different brokers with very deep retail knowledge, particularly of the Inland Empire. This is not like markets that you have west of us. So the 3 firms that we interviewed all had very deep knowledge, had good retail connections. We really talked to the brokers and really made sure that there was a commitment, that they were focused on getting the property sold, and not just sold to anybody, but sold to a tenant or a developer that would then immediately go into construction. So I think one of the things that from the staff side and definitely from the developer side, everybody's worried about missing the real estate cycle. Everybody's saying it's going to end, and nobody knows whether it's 8 months or 18 months. But it will end, and we want to make sure that we don't miss the cycle. So we're very confident that Lee is the group to do that. They certainly understand the Inland Empire, and they certainly understand what retailers are looking for. So
it was Lee and Associates, and who were the other 2, Andrea?
I apologize. I don't remember the names.
Do you know, Mark?
It was CBRE, and then it was a small local firm out of Ontario that's name is
and they were interviewed by the entire team, so we spent about a morning going through. They had a chance to provide, obviously, proposals that we went through in advance, and then we had each of them make presentations because we felt that was important to not just read the written document, but actually get a feel for the individuals who are going to be out marketing the city. And so, again, we wanted to spend time talking to them.
And who was on the panel?
I was, Mark was, Tom Clark was, John was, I believe Vaughn was there that day, and I want to say, and Jim Raby.
Jim Raby with Kaiser Marston. He's our economics advisor.
And so Lee of Associates of Carlsbad was selected.
Again, yes, because of the extensive knowledge that they had in that particular market segment.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Move for approval.
Councilmember Marquez.
I think it's just to go back to the Lee. There are more local Lee brokers. But we were really looking for the one that had that experience, and we've had tremendous, as the council knows, we've had some tremendous success with the local Lee and Associates staff, but this was a very unique situation, and so within their office, that's who submitted the proposal.
My question to you, Mark, just real briefly, I'm interested in the proceeds of the sale. Will some of that money be used to demo the mall?
I think it's important that we do recognize this is redevelopment agency property, and so under state law, that money is to be given to the county and distributed to the taxing entities. We've had terrific conversations with the county of San Bernardino. I go back to some of our earlier conversations about the relationship. It's important that that the county is successful and that we're successful, and I think we have a very good understanding. We've begun to develop some very strong bridges with the county staff, and they recognize, they also want to have places to eat at lunch. So
They
if
work
nothing
here.
else, they've been good partners in this. We still are in discussions with them, though, about developing a compensation agreement that would allow us to retain all of the proceeds from the sale of that property to be reinvested in the downtown.
I see.
We still have formal agreements to develop. We're in the process of doing that now, but we have a commitment from them that they recognize that money is really the money that we can use then to make an impact on the Carousel Mall property.
I see. It's a process.
It's a process, but again, we've had very favorable reception from the county staff. They realize that that's really the financial wherewithal, then the only financial wherewithal that we will have to reinvest in the Carousel Mall property to ultimately demolish it and then begin to parcel that off and sell it to developers for other development projects.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
No other comments? Please cast your votes. Votes already casted.
On item 19, the motion to approve was made by Mr. Valdivia and the second by Ms. Marquez, and it passed 7-0.
Thank you. Next is item 20. This is a report from the council members that attended the League of California Cities. Mr. Barrios is listed here first. Want to give a report?
Yes, Mayor. Just a couple of weeks ago, myself and a few of my colleagues were up in Sacramento for the California League of Cities annual convention, and I always look forward to going to these meetings because of the networking and finding out what's happening throughout the state of California. And as far as going through the expo that they have displayed there, where there's a variety of different services provided for cities. The latest in technology and what people are using, it's amazing what's out there and what's coming towards cities in the future. So I won't steal all the thunder. I'll let my colleague go ahead and report on it as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Valdivia?
Thank you, Mayor. I also attended the League of Cities Annual Expo and enjoyed many of the networking opportunities and several of the workshops. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Charette?
I was hoping Barrios would give the full report, and none of us would have to, but obviously he's passed the ball down. I, too, attended. It was a great, there were more attendees at this league conference than there have ever been, I believe. There was over 1,800 people there. It was well attended. There were a lot of breakout sessions. I attended a number of them. The one that really struck me, and I want to just make a comment about, and it was one, they have a whole list of these, and it gives you an idea, and you go into these rooms, these breakout sessions in these rooms, and, you go in, and one's on economic development, and there's 25, 30 people that are interested in that. There's one on water or some other global warming or some other obscure subject that everybody's interested in, but one that I took particular interest in was for I think it was titled something to the effect of homelessness, what a city can do. And of course that's a pretty major topic here in San Bernardino County and in San Bernardino specifically. And I went into that meeting somewhat early and sat up near the front of the room, and a few minutes later the panel came on, and I turned around and looked to the front of the room. It's a room it's probably half as big as this room, but it was standing room only. Cities from all over the state of California were in there wanting to know what can be done about the homeless problem. I bring this to everyone's attention because San Bernardino, I think, gets a bad rap for being the homeless capital of the world, and that we're trying to attract them and that we're doing things that will bring them in here. Nothing could be further from the truth. My colleague Virginia and I sit on the Interagency Council on Homelessness with the county, and we are doing lots and lots of positive things to deal with this issue. And again, my point is, I turned around and looked at the room, and I couldn't believe how many people I saw there, and I obviously said, I guess we're not the only ones with the problem. And the problem is throughout the state. And it's rich cities, it's poor cities, it's cities like ours, it's small ones, it's large ones, it's everywhere. And so that was probably what I got most out of that, just kind of feeling as though we're really not alone in this issue. And it was pretty important. But that was kind of I wouldn't call it a highlight. The keynote speakers were great. The other workout sessions on economic development, EIFDs, and the like were also very educational and informative. So not to mention the just mingling and networking with colleagues through, or counterparts throughout the state. So it's a worthwhile thing. I haven't gone in a long time, and I was glad I was going. I hope I'll be able to go again next year.
Councilman Nichol?
Yeah, well, I echo all those comments. I think it was a great opportunity to learn about other aspects of city operations that perhaps we as council members may not be privy to. I was, the last day of the conference, I attended the city attorney's breakout session. And it was really an interesting session to attend because the way it was structured was sort of a what-if kind of scenario, and dealing with a lot of the issues that we're dealing with currently in terms of the relationship between council members and their city attorneys, and what if this happens, and what if this happens, and it was really fascinating just to sit in the back of the room and watch all these city attorneys from across California contemplate how to deal with these very complex issues. And under our new charter, obviously, we're going to be shifting to a different structure in terms of how and the manner in which we have our legal counsel situated and established here in the city. So I think it was a good exercise to just kind of get an understanding from a city attorney's perspective of some of the daily tribulations and difficulties that are encountered. But also, I had the opportunity to be offered a position on the League's Transportation Policy Committee. And so in the next couple of weeks, I will be working with the League to develop that relationship and give our city a seat on one of the major policy committees of the League, and represent our city in an area that I think is much needed, that hopefully we can have that seat at the table to assist in crafting some of the changes that are necessary to ensure that our people have the infrastructures that's necessary to improve their quality of life and create more opportunity. So with that, it was a great conference. I look forward to next year. I thank all my colleagues for attending. Look forward to more of us attending next year and learning more about the great things happening across our state with other cities. Thank you.
Councilmember Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first I want to start off by saying I ditto everything that everybody said, and I'm going to keep mine short and sweet, but this was my first year as a council member going to the League of Cities event in Sacramento, and I really enjoyed myself, and not just enjoying myself because these three guys was ripping and running me up and down streets and, here and there. But the fact that, I had the opportunity to learn a lot of different things and see camaraderie within us and other cities. So I know before I became a council member, I went down to the League of Cities to the new council members, new mayors conference, and I believe it was in 2016. And I look forward to going back in January 2017 because I tell you, I don't remember anything that I heard back in 2016. So in 2018 in January, I'll be back. So I had a wonderful time. I was glad that I went. And again, I hope that we see more of our people here. I was looking for Virginia so I could hang out with her.
Look, somebody has to stay behind and man the store. I'll attend next year, 2018.
So we had a good time, and I enjoyed it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
One other thing.
Councilman Schmidt.
The pens they hand out at League of Cities are the absolute best. And
I'm going to call the League and ask them if they will send him a box of pens.
Ask them, here, you can have this one. because I brought a handful back. But I'm going to hand them out sparingly, believe me, because I think I've got about a lifetime supply, and they're just the best.
And they gave some nice chargers, too.
Thank you. We'll now move to public comments. Brandon Carter. Would you please push the button?
Okay. Thank you, Council. I appreciate being here. My name is Brandon Carter. I was born and raised in Fontana. And for the past 6 months, I've been looking at San Bernardino and seeing how to really redevelop the city as well. And I'm wondering, me being a youth, pretty much representing the youth in San Bernardino, we want to help. We just have no direction. So we're looking for, I'm just wondering for myself, if we have ideas and I find other people, other business owners that have ideas that they want to apply to the city, who I would speak to present these ideas to. Would it be the city manager?
You can certainly send those to me. Kathy Brand is responsible for economic development programs and housing programs. So I'll connect you with several different people, and we'd love to have the ideas and certainly have the youth engaged in our community. That's an important aspect of our city.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just thankful for that. I think
That's great.
Thank you.
And, he's clearly has a lot of stamina, because look at how late it is. He waited.
William Ciosi.
Push the button.
Button. There we go. I had a couple different things that I was going to talk about tonight, but there was something at the beginning of this meeting tonight that caught my attention, and I thought I might address it. Gossip, slander, hateful, evil speech, lies, half-truths, manipulation of what people say. These things destroy people's lives. Some people seem to have a sick sense of repeating things. They kind of get their jollies. Just wanted to kind of say that. If you know what it's about, you know what it's about. If you don't, you don't. If you ever have any question about me personally, I'm an open book. I'll tell you anything you want to know. So with that out of the way, let me share maybe something good, maybe, hopefully. I don't know. I got this email that I checked while I was here tonight, so I'll share this with you. From the DCA Director's Office. Dear applicant, we appreciate your interest in serving as a member of the Bureau of Cannabis Control's Cannabis Advisory Committee. After careful review of the hundreds of applications received, we will soon announce the members that have been selected to serve. I believe the committee represents the diverse backgrounds of California and our evolving cannabis industry. Thank you once again for your interest in serving on our committee. Regards, Dean Graffillo, Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs. So I thought I'd just share that with you tonight. And I'll leave the other stuff that I was thinking about saying for another time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Porter.
Mayor, council, good people. So, vision. Well, Mr. Charette talked about a vision from 2010, and then the mayor came up with another vision that they had before. And the reason we have these visions is to lead us in a certain direction. It's not meant to be a paperweight, Mr. Charette. You know that, right? It's not meant to just be heavy taxpayer dollars used to sit on your shelf. We really need these visions that are created by the community to be implemented. My vision is of Arrowhead Peak and the grandeur that it will bring back to our city. I understand that we have a trademark that's more incredible than any trademark that any city has in the entire world. We have a trademark that is as incredible as the tallest building in the world, or the smallest things in the world. Whatever it is, we have one of the largest recognizable arrowhead features in the world. And if we utilize the information that was set in the Legends of the Arrowhead back in the 1800s, copied from local history and local stories, we could go back across the world with the Legends of the Arrowhead stories. They have already been across the world, to Sydney, to London, all across the United States. They went by wagon train, by stagecoach. These stories, the Legends of the Arrowhead, are ours. They belong to our area. We can barely see the arrowhead on that seal, but it should be our number one thing that we show the world that represents us. So I took it upon myself to study the arrowhead on my own, and I'm still going. And now I found up to 10 versions of the history of the arrowhead, 2 main versions, compiling a book for us. Now, these stories, I went to one of the last native kind of speakers. He's trying to bring the language back, Mr. Ernest Siva. And he says there is native thought in the words that are in the Legends of the Arrowhead. He also said that keep going. Keep searching. Why are we not using the Legends of the Arrowhead in every single thing when we're having a vision? The Legends of the Arrowhead is important. It's our history here in San Bernardino, and we need to utilize it more. Thank you very much.
Carmel Rowe.
My name is Carmel Rowe, 41 years here in the city, born and raised. I'd like to put public comment back the way it used to be, because when I hear them talk about AECOM, I have so much to say, and yet I can't say it, because you made me say everything I could say in 3 minutes prior to. And it really feels to me, Mayor Davis, that you took the community, what was left of it, out of this city when you shut us all up. We had 9, maybe 12 minutes, and then we got to talk after each item. Yeah, I know it was long. But you know what? You're supposed to be the voice of this community, and you are not. Okay, and I have a problem with that. I have a problem that Shirley Arledge sat here all night last time, and she's an elderly woman, and she didn't get to go home until 10. Maybe public comments that aren't on the agenda should be first, so these people, they don't have to be out when the street lights turn on, because it's pretty dangerous out here. Okay, the next thing that I would like to say is I heard Councilman Barrios ask, do we have a vision? And so this is maybe, you've been here 5 years now, Mayor, and you don't have a vision for the city, and we don't have anything implemented. We have a bunch of excuses. And then, Fred, when you said, in 2010, we shelved it for 3 days, how much taxpayer dollars and how many consulting fees went into those 3 days? And we laughed it off. No, it's not funny. You're playing with my money. You're playing with my taxpayer dollars. I worked every single day in this city from the time I was 15 and a half years old still today. That's my money. You're messing with my money, my taxes. Okay? So I think that you guys should consider what you say, and I think that before you do away with the theater square, maybe you should have had that strategic vision plan so that you could know what you're going to do, because that's a valuable piece of property. And then I'd like to know, when that parcel gets sold, are you guys going to pay off the Section 108 loan that the CDBG funds spend $733,000 paying off, or is the CDBG funds going to keep kicking in for that and the developer walk, or maybe we get some money or maybe we don't? Then the next thing I'd like to say is I've sent emails regarding the Cannabis Commission. I got a letter from the state that says cannabis is going to be taxed at 15% on January 1st, 2018. Too bad we're not collecting the taxes, Mayor. You are the one who tried to shut out marijuana, and look at the mess, Mayor, that you made, and I blame you and only you. Okay, because there's a lot of members on this council that tried to tell you. I tried to tell you. I wrote an ordinance. You know why I didn't push it through? Because I didn't want to cost the city any money. I didn't want to fight. I wanted to get along, and I wanted to do the right thing, and I wanted you to help the people, Mayor, but you failed me. And then, Fred, that community that you talk about, you know, that it was included in the vision, what community is that? Because your community is a lot different than the community that I run in. Why don't you go downtown? Why don't you look around? Our community is not you.
Mark Glutelek.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Mark Gutglick. I just wanted to revisit item number 16 if we could. I understand Mr. Devereaux is a very competent individual. He's probably forgotten more about running a large organization than I ever knew. The issue, as I see it, is there's a certain degree of vagueness to what is spelled out here, and I'm struck by the wording strategic planning and organizational development, and I think someone else said there was some other term that was used. I'd like to find out precisely how much money he's being paid and what his performance criteria is or are, his criteria, plural, singular. What the performance guarantees are. The other issue is, it was brought up, there was a conflict of interest, I think, with regard to tax revenue dispute with the county. It seems to me there's several others as well. For example, in Ontario, he has a contract for $225,000 a year, and I believe it runs the same 3 years that you're talking about here. It's not really with the City of Ontario, it's with the Ontario International Airport Authority. They're very aggressive with regard to the development of their airport, and they consider San Bernardino International Airport to be in competition with their efforts. There's a number of other issues similar to that where he's a consultant with someone or another governmental entity. I'd like to, before I leave tonight, to be able to get answers to all those questions, because I'm going to be setting pen to paper here very, very soon with regard to these issues specifically. How much money he's making, what that translates to a number of hours, what he's actually doing, a description of what he's doing, and addressing the conflict of interest issues.
Thank you. David Alexander.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate you for this 3 minutes. I'm here about the turkey trot, as usual. The turkey trot's coming up, and the turkey trot is different this year. All of you pretty much came out last year. It's different in how you say, I'm glad you asked. It's different in the fact that we are participating with 3 other cities in this year's turkey trot. Hey, Chief, how you doing? We're participating in Highland, Loma Linda, and Redlands. We're participating with all those cities. It's the first time in the Inland Empire's history where we have combined all those cities, and we call it a series medal. So if you participate in all 4 races, ours starts it off, we kick it off with the turkey trot, and then we move on to Highland, Loma Linda, and Redlands. And you get this special dazzling medal for participating in all 4 races. So I just wanted to share that with you because I know I've talked to the mayor of Highland. She's going to come out, and she's going to come out with it. So I would have the council or you, Mayor, if you could do me a favor and reach out to your counterparts in Highland. I already talked to Penny, Redlands, and what is it? Thank you very much, Loma Linda. I love it. They're paying attention. Loma, thank you, Jim. Loma Linda, if you can reach out to those cities and extend a challenge to them, and come to the turkey trot in our city, because, like I said, we kick it off. We start this series, and it's the first time, like I said, in the Inland Empire where there's a challenge, a series of races, all done, and we're included in that. So you should be very proud of that. That's all I have for you guys. Unless you have a question.
Are they all going to be the same day?
No. They're each. Nobody can do that. It goes on month by month, and I think it ends in February 2018 if you participate in all the races.
Will there be a mayor's challenge again this year?
Yes, there will be. See, that's what I'm calling a mayor's challenge to those other mayors to come to our city to start off with the inaugural series. So if you reach out to the other mayors and say, "Hey, am I out of time yet?" To come out. Okay, it'll ding. Okay. And you know, we have the relay again. So those who can't make the 3.1 miles, you can do a relay. You can do half, and then your partner can do the other half.
How many partners can you have? 7, 8, or 12?
Just 2 partners. Just 2.
A team of 2.
2 partners. But challenge those other mayors and see if they can come out. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. All right. What is that being done? Are we doing that tonight, sir, or no? Oh, no. Okay, never mind. All right. That's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more speaker slips, City Clerk? All right. That concludes public comments. The council will now reconvene in closed session upon the conclusion of. You want to do announcements?
Let's do them and do them brief.
Thank you, Councilman Schratt. Mayor Pro Tem, we will take that advice. Councilmember Marquez.
Well, I do have some rollover minutes, and I do plan to use them. These are important. Assistant Fire Chief Dan Muncy has already mentioned it earlier during his presentation, but the San Bernardino County Fire Department, in partnership with the City of San Bernardino, will be celebrating Fire Prevention Week, open house on Saturday, October 7th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you have any questions, you can call Manny Sedano at 909-918-2201. The San Bernardino Business and Community Organization meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 10th at 10 a.m. This meeting is taking place at the Arrowhead Event Center, located at 180 South Arrowhead Avenue. Please come and join us for a morning of conversation regarding our city's quality of life with Lieutenant Rich Lawhead and myself. If you have any questions, you can call me here at the office. The Ramon Alessandro and La Placita Neighborhood Associations will be hosting their joint meeting on Wednesday, October 11th from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Villaseñor Branch Library located at 525 North Mount Vernon Avenue. Our featured guest speaker will be our Mayor, Gary Davis. For more information, you can call me here. I'd like to take this time out to update residents on the traffic and pedestrian safety improvements which were installed on the intersection of Baseline and Davidson a few weeks ago. As many of you recall, this was the site of a very, very tragic pedestrian fatality where a toddler was killed March or April of this year. In addition to newer and brighter flashers, new signage, our public works staff also replaced the in-pavement lights, marking the crosswalk with brighter lighting. And trust me, I went by this week at night, and it literally blinds you. But at any rate, I would like to remind drivers to please slow down that corridor and follow the speed limit. So thank you to our Public Works Director for these new improvements. And finally, I would like to congratulate Meet La Cafe on their 80th year of serving our community. A celebration will take place at Saturday, October 14th at 602 North Mount Vernon Avenue. For additional information regarding this event, you can call 909-888-0460. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Barrios.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple announcements here, or a few of them. Wednesday, October 25th is at 9 a.m. is the Southwest District Coffee with the Cop at Michael's Burgers, 940 West Highland Avenue. For more information and to confirm the location, because I think it may have changed, contact Eileen Hartz at 909-384-5694. Thursday, October 26th, the day after, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., it's evening coffee with the Cop at 710 North D Street in the main training room. There's been a lot of loss this week, and there's been loss in our city. And I just want to recognize the fact that a gentleman who was a friend of mine at Victory Outreach passed away in his sleep last night, well, actually Monday night. And I just wanted to recognize him for the work he's done for our community and going through the struggle of getting himself and saving himself from gangs and violence on the street as well here in San Bernardino. This gentleman was Sonny Green, and he was a young guy, early 30s, mid 30s. Has a wife and 5 children he left behind, and I will be departing after this to attend his services that are going on right now at Victory Outreach, and just want to know if we can end this meeting in his name. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Valdivia.
Now my turn.
Yes.
He said none tonight. 2 quick ones. Wednesday, October 11th, 2017, this year, actually. Wednesday, October 11th, 9 a.m. in the morning, San Bernardino Police Department, Northeast District, Coffee with a Cop at Denny's Restaurant, 702 East Highland Avenue. Contact Eileen Hards at 909-384-5694. That's always a really good turnout. Friday, October 13th. Friday the 13th. No, I'm sorry. I'm reading wrong. Saturday, October 14th, 7 a.m. to 12 noon is the Wildwood Park revitalization. That's at Wildwood Park, 536 East 40th Street. For further information, I don't have the phone number here, but you can contact our Parks and Rec Department. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Nichol.
Yeah, I have a few. This Friday, upcoming Friday, the 18th annual Tachikawa San Bernardino Sister Cities Golf Tournament will take place at Shandon Hills Golf Club at 3380 North Little Mountain Drive from 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Again, that's this Friday, benefiting the Tachikawa San Bernardino Sister Cities organization. This Saturday is a big day. We have a lot of events going on throughout the city, so I would ask you to read the newspaper and go online. We have our 5th annual Back to 66, Route 66 rendezvous downtown from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Also on Saturday, the 2nd annual Blues, Brews, Badges, and Barbecue. Say that 5 times fast. Benefiting the San Bernardino Police Officers Foundation will take place at Brew Rebellion at 160 North Leland Norton Way from noon until 6 p.m. So go down, get yourself some barbecue, some brews, and then head up to Route 66 and enjoy the day in San Bernardino. Great things happening. And finally, we do have a Coffee with the Cop taking place at 1766 West Tyndall Drive, Farmer Boys Restaurant, at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, October 18. That concludes my announcement. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Richard. Councilmember Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a few. On Monday, October the 9th, Northwest PAC will be having their meeting at New Hope Family Life Center, 1505 West Highland Avenue at 6:30 p.m., and that's on Monday, October the 9th. On, I believe it is, yes, Wednesday, October the 11th, Terrace West North Neighborhood Association meeting at the VFW Post 8737 will be having their monthly meeting. Contact Charlie Jacobs, 909-889-0181. And I would like to thank Councilmember Marquez for announcing the traffic signal the traffic signs at Baseline and Davison. I've had several conversations with Mark Scott about it and several conversations with Andrea, so I'm glad to see it there. Please, residents, please be cautious. Drive through there carefully. It's brighter, it's lighter, and we don't want any other incidents there at that intersection. Also, around Arroyo Valley High School, we've been having this conversation. I think I announced it a couple of meetings. the illegal dumping is back again. I don't know why people find it comforting to dump things around a school where it's around the kids. And I'm going to keep talking about it until you guys please stop. I believe there's going to be a dump day at Wildwood Park, October there was one in here on Thursday. Blair Park, okay, at Blair Park on Thursday, October the 19th. For those of you that can't make it out on a weekend, here it is during the week. So let's try to get our dumping down there and stop dumping, especially outside of high schools. You guys please stop. Thank you.
And it is a misdemeanor, and we are issuing citations for that, and certainly our police department has all sorts of issues to address, but it is a significant enough community issue. Unfortunately, we have no alternative, but people will be cited for that if it's observed. So,
If we catch them.
yes.
Councilman.
You can also have bulky item pickup at your home. You don't even need to go and dump it someplace. It's easier just to set it out on your curb, and Burtec will take that for you. You just need to call them in advance of your trash day.
Thank you. Councilmember Mulvihill.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an announcement and an inquiry. The announcement is the Community Builders Neighborhood Association has moved its regular monthly meetings from the first Wednesday of the month to the second Wednesday of the month, so it'll be holding its meeting on Wednesday, October 11th, the same place, the First Congregation United Church of Christ at 3041 North Sierra Way. They always have a very interesting speaker. Please call Myra Elder at 909-886-1566 for further information. And my query is, Councilman Charette needs to explain a little bit about the PD patch that he has on his shirt.
Oh.
You didn't say anything about that.
Well, thank you, Jim. I'm glad you reminded me of that. I'm honoring October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, October 2017, and our PD gets these patches made at their own expense and has them sewn onto their uniforms at their own expense, and they sell them to likely council members that would buy one and
I have one.
Iron it on to a black shirt. So I'm wearing it tonight, both recognizing Breast Cancer Awareness Month and honoring and recognizing our PD for the good job that they do and for the efforts that they put forward in this great fundraiser and awareness activity. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you,
Chief.
Mayor.
Thank you, Jim, for asking me about that. I appreciate it.
That's all.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Seeing none, we will reconvene here after our continuing closed session.
Mayor?
Yes.
Beg your pardon. I actually have two really quick announcements. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Disability Sports Festival at CSUSB. This also on Saturday. It is a festival designed to bring attention to people of all ages and abilities, and so I wanted to mention that was something you could do on Saturday. And the other thing, it's the opening night of the San Bernardino Symphony Orchestra's season. So if you're looking for tickets, there are some still available. And they're just kicking off their search for a new conductor, and so one of the conductors they'll be considering will be at that concert. Thank you.
Thank you for the announcement. Any other announcements? All right, we will reconvene here upon the completion of closed session.